Chapter 301, Whether to Use Force to Eliminate the Cybertronians. X-Men? Everyone was surprised. The X-Men's model is that the president is directly in charge, talks to the president directly, and can choose whether to perform a mission or not according to the difficulty of the mission. Of course, since it is directly responsible to the president, there are corresponding task indicators every year. You can't take advantage of the loopholes. They say that the mission is difficult, so what's the point of being responsible? Optimus Prime seemed to be deep in thought and was speechless, but Duke knew he was scanning the network. After a while, he finally came back to his senses. He had checked the X-Men's cooperation regulations without the United States noticing, thinking that the regulations also applied to them. The others didn't notice it, they just thought Optimus Prime was thinking. Only Charlotte Miling seemed to have reacted. She slapped the table and said angrily, "Did you scan our confidential files just now? Optimus Prime, you are invading our privacy, which will affect the trust between us." Duke sneered at this. "Miss Miling, the Earth is too weak. Even if you scan it, what can you do? Can you notice it? Don't you find it ridiculous that the weak make mandatory demands on the strong? Just like me, I can monitor everything that is going on Earth. Who can do anything to me?" The Americans seem to be used to being arrogant. They always feel that they are very important and that the whole world listens to them. Duke was not used to her attitude. Charlotte Miling twitched the corners of her mouth, feeling herself being slapped in the face. Optimus Prime turned his head and looked at Charlotte Miling with a stern expression. "Humans are really not trustworthy. I just found out that you are submitting a motion on whether to use force to eliminate the Cybertronians." Then he slammed the table and cursed. "You have the face to say, trust each other, while saying one thing and doing another behind our backs? Sure enough, my previous worry was true. You humans are not worthy of trust." If Duke wasn't here, he might have wanted to kill this group of people directly. Overtly negotiating, but secretly targeting them, was this plotting against them? But Optimus Prime trusted Duke's character. Based on the information scanned so far, Karazhan had prevented countless disasters in the past century. Just as he first proposed to cooperate with the U.S. team, he believed in the character of the U.S. team. Of course, he knew that Duke would not manage them directly, so he chose Duke's student as the next best thing. The crowd suddenly burst into an uproar. "You really did this?" Steve glared at Ross and Charlotte Miling. "This kind of thing that makes people worse is the most embarrassing thing. Tell me, it's not true." Peggy Carter was also very angry. The act of killing the donkey after it has done its work was actually done? From the current point of view, the Autobots are completely innocent. They were just deceived by the natural enemy. Although Yu Tiandi is Optimus Prime's teacher, Optimus Prime has already proved himself and chosen his own position. Just because of this unfounded suspicion, you are going to stab a knife in the back? Oh, sure enough, as Optimus Prime said, humans are the least trustworthy. Look at the previous S-Shield, the same is true. I don't know. The congressman's matter, I can't get involved, I don't know. Charlotte Miling was frightened, and Optimus Prime's murderous aura was no joke. Everyone turned to look at Secretary of State Ross. This person must be able to participate. Ahem. Being stared at by everyone with threatening eyes, Ross couldn't help but clear his throat. "There is such a thing, but it has been suspended, and the submission of the topic has been put on hold indefinitely." Indefinitely? "Yes," Ross nodded. "The president has already vetoed it with his own power, and this issue will not be pursued further. The project has been shelved indefinitely." "So there's a possibility it could be reopened?" Optimus Prime inquired skeptically. "I can assure you, it won't be restarted," Ross replied, raising his hand to emphasize his point. "You need to understand that many congressmen disagree with your presence here. The issue isn't ours, it's yours. They have never fully understood why you chose to live on Earth. Perhaps it's because of the rare metal mines here? Until the natural enemy appeared and pulled Cybertron over, there was no clarity." Optimus Prime remained silent, contemplating Ross's words. "We don't trust you, and that's the reason," Ross continued. "If you want to stay on Earth, you must be supervised. Otherwise, you'll have to leave." After a moment of thought, Optimus Prime responded, We Autobots can accept the regulations of the X-Men, be directly responsible to the President, and we need Karajan to supervise. Ross saw his opportunity and seized it. That's impossible. The cooperative relationship between Karajan and the X-Men Academy was established long ago, and it's not included in the X-Men regulations. The President already has too many responsibilities. Even managing the X-Men Academy takes up most of his time. Peggy Carter interjected suddenly. Ross, do you want to manage it yourself? Ross was taken aback by her suggestion. Miss Carter, what do you mean by that? The President has to deal with so many things every year. Even the X-Men Academy requires most of his attention. Adding the Autobots to his plate, Ross felt frustrated, realizing his plans might not come to fruition. Then let the Secretary General supervise. After all, he is responsible to the President, Captain America suggested. Ross gritted his teeth, knowing he was losing ground. Mr. Duke, what do you think? Yes, Duke nodded. Mr. Ross, I have a suggestion for you. Please, Ross said, trying to remain composed. If it's not your responsibility, don't worry about it, Duke advised. Ross's mouth twitched in frustration. I've made a note, then today's meeting will come to an end. I will inform the President of your request as soon as possible. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Optimus Prime? Yes, I need to accept the power of fellow Autobots, Optimus Prime stated firmly. You mean extraterrestrial Autobots? Ross asked, frowning. Correct, Optimus Prime confirmed. The regulations of the X-Men differ slightly from those of the Autobots. Mutants are products of Earth, and as long as they are accepted, new forces will continuously emerge. However, the Autobots are not from Earth. The Autobots who escaped from Cybertron are scattered across the universe. To replenish their strength, they need to recall their fellow Autobots from outside. Although some Autobots are already lurking on Earth, Optimus Prime must have the right to summon more. Without this, the new regulations would be meaningless. I need to discuss this with the President. I can't give you an answer right now, but I will reply within a week, Ross said, standing up to leave. Ross knew he couldn't make this decision lightly. If Optimus Prime summoned Autobots from across the universe to Earth, who knows what could happen? If the Autobots' overall strength increased, would they become a threat to the United States and the planet? This was a complex issue that required careful consideration. End of this chapter. Chapter 302, The Twilight of the Gods is Coming. Thank you, Mr. Duke, Optimus Prime said sincerely. You're welcome. However, I still don't fully understand the purpose of your existence. And why do you exist? Duke replied. Robots. It sounds like a magical concept. Just like the robots created by Tony Stark. As long as you give them a basic thinking capability, they can operate according to the will of their creator. Optimus Prime frowned. Mr. Duke, are you suggesting that our creation is somewhat peculiar? Yes. A robotic life form, no matter how you look at it, seems strange, Duke said, shaking his head. Regarding the form of life, I know that Cybertron has a much longer history than humans, and you arrived on Earth as early as the Jurassic period, Duke continued, waving his hand. What? Captain America and Peggy Carter were shocked. 500 million years ago. What do you mean by that expression? Duke asked, noticing Optimus Prime's surprise. According to your Earth's timeline, it should be from 1 million to 9960 million years BC. I know Cybertron has a long history, but I didn't expect to have arrived on Earth so long ago. I always thought the earliest arrival on Earth was more than 1 million years ago, Optimus Prime said, clearly astonished. Duke smiled. The more surprising revelations are yet to come. What? Optimus Prime asked. Your ancestors, I'm not sure if they were considered Cybertronian at that time. Anyway, your ancient ancestors, before the Jurassic period, were all physical beings, Duke explained. What? Optimus Prime was shocked. Where did you get all this information from? More than 1 million years ago, there would have been no humans, let alone records left on Earth. Captain America and Peggy Carter were also stunned. What? Physical life? Do you mean carbon-based life, or, like us, flesh and bones? Yes, I'm not sure if they were carbon-based life forms, but they were indeed similar to us, Duke said. They had skin, flesh, blood, and bones. Of course, it may be that your creator, the Supreme Lord, made you robot life forms when you were created. It is also possible that you changed yourselves little by little, eventually abandoning your physical bodies for stronger steel ones. In Transformers: Age of Extinction, Lockdown is depicted as half flesh, half mechanical. Nebula is a life form that Thanos transformed into a half flesh, half mechanical being bit by bit, and Rocket Raccoon has undergone similar modifications. It's not difficult to accept. For Nebula, isn't Thanos her creator? Who knows what the original Transformers were like? Captain America and Peggy Carter looked at Optimus Prime in amazement. How did these Autobots transform from carbon-based life into steel life? This really shocks me, but I'm still curious. How did Mr. Duke know? Your lifespan should be less than 120 years, right? Optimus Prime asked. Captain America and Peggy Carter also pricked up their ears, eager to know how Duke had this information. It is true that humans have not existed on Earth for long, but there has been life here for a very long time. Advanced life forms were born billions of years ago. I call them old gods. Your Cybertronians also encountered them when you first arrived and were defeated, Duke explained. Oh? Optimus Prime was intrigued. Don't you believe it? If you had won back then, Earth would not be a human world. Your Cybertronians came to Earth about 4 times. The first time was in the Jurassic period, the second time was more than 1,000 million years ago, the third time was 400 million years ago, and the fourth time was with humans, just a few decades ago, Duke said. Optimus Prime shook his head. I didn't mean that. Did you find records of the battles from that time? Yes, Duke nodded. Captain America and Peggy Carter finally understood. Why did the time from the first to the second arrival span more than 3,000 million years? Optimus Prime asked, curious. Because that was the time Way and the ancient gods. Duke began to explain. Duke continued, they were the most powerful, but later, with the Godfall and the attacks from alien forces, some gods left Earth to explore the universe. Qing Tianji nodded and saluted Duke. Thank you for telling me this. You're welcome. Then I'll take my leave. Goodbye. After watching Optimus Prime leave, Captain America asked curiously, Is what you said true? Why, did you think I was joking with him? Oh, no. Have you seen the mechanical Tyrannosaurus Rex? What? Hey! Duke smiled and returned to Karazhan. The person he was waiting for had arrived. Miss Sif, thank you for bringing these things to me personally. You're welcome, Sif replied coldly. In her eyes, Duke was a robber. She had been to Earth twice, and it didn't surprise her at all that Duke knew her name. This was Thor's childhood sweetheart. She could have become the new Queen of Asgard, but unfortunately, that role went to Jane Foster. What about Thor? Why didn't he come in person? Duke asked with a smile. Thor is crusading against the chaotic 9 realms, and based on the time, it should be almost over, Sif said. Chich, the 9 realms? It felt like the Middle Ages, just a magical world with strange creatures, much like the monsters in Journey to the West. If those guys ever attacked Earth, he wouldn't need to intervene. They couldn't withstand the bombardment of modern weaponry. Is there anything else? Seeing that Sif didn't leave, Duke let out an "Oh." After you go back, tell Thor to be careful. Ragnarok is coming. Thank you for the reminder. Sif turned to leave, though it wasn't the answer she had hoped for. Wait, what else? If I am not mistaken, the Aether will appear soon. Don't let it stay in Asgard. It will cause serious damage. Duke finally reminded her. After all, he didn't want Frigga to die. Thank you. Sif thanked him and turned to leave. Wait! What else? Sif turned around, feeling a bit exasperated. You should know about the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Sif shook her head. It's okay if you don't. Thor should know. Look for a half-life, half-mechanical raccoon called Rocket Raccoon, with a huge tree-like creature next to him. I don't know if he has joined the Guardians of the Galaxy yet. If the Aether is destined to be found, that raccoon may help you. End of this chapter. Chapter 303. Raccoon? In Asgard, Heimdall stood gazing at the starry sky, mesmerized by the gorgeous transformation of the stars. He had been watching for a long time, lost in the beauty of the cosmos. Footsteps approached from behind. You are late, Heimdall said without turning around. Sometimes, happiness is harder to accept than war, Thor replied as he walked over. There is something wrong with your way of finding joy, Heimdall remarked. Maybe, Thor conceded. What's the status of each planet? They're still flashing. From here, I can see the 9 realms and trillions of living beings. Do you remember the celestial body alignment I told you about? Yes, I remember. All the celestial bodies are lining up, and they are about to appear? Since I started watching, I have never seen such a wonder of the universe. Few people know about it, and even fewer have seen it. Although it has certain risks, it is indeed beautiful. Heimdall, Heimdall, a voice called out. Sif. Thor was momentarily stunned. It seems she has completed her task. Heimdall inserted his long sword, opened the portal, and brought Sif back. Welcome home. Sif, you haven't encountered any trouble, have you? I should have sent someone with you, Thor said, stepping forward. No, although Duke is a bit stronger, Sif replied, shaking her head. Oh, just a little. I see a lot, Thor muttered, clearly upset with Duke, who had blackmailed him. Sif shook her head and looked directly at Thor. Let's not talk about that. I brought back important news. What news? Thor asked. The ether particle is about to appear. Ether particles? Thor frowned. At this moment, he still didn't know what ether particles were, although he had heard stories of dark elves growing up. But Heimdall, being older and wiser, naturally knew about it. Heimdall frowned. Where did you hear about the ether particle? Did Duke mention it? Yes. Sif nodded, looking at Thor again. He said, Don't let the ether particle stay in Asgard. It will cause serious damage to Asgard. Heimdall's frown deepened. It seems the situation is critical. You know about ether particle? Thor asked, turning his head in doubt. You'd better ask your father about this matter, Heimdall advised. I'll go right away, Thor said, feeling the oppressive atmosphere. He turned around, ready to fly away. Wait, Thor, Sif called out hastily. What else? Thor asked. Duke told you to find Rocket Raccoon, a half-mechanical, half-living being. If the ether particle is alive, it will help you, Sif said quickly. The instrument that absorbs ether particles is made by Rocket Raccoon. Rocket Raccoon, is that his name? Thor frowned. He was very upset with Duke, but there was no doubt that Duke was a strong man whom even his father respected. As a powerful magician, Duke often mastered certain mysterious powers. This was the case with his mother, Frigg, who was called a wizard in Asgard. Thor saw the wizards of Earth as akin to the wizards of Asgard. A suggestion from someone as powerful as the king of the gods couldn't be easily ignored, even if Thor resisted the idea. Probably called Rocket? I'm not too sure, but the main body is a raccoon. He said that Rocket Raccoon is very likely to join the Guardians of the Galaxy, Sif explained. What is that? Heimdall asked, shaking his head. The universe was vast, far beyond the 9 realms controlled by Asgard. His sight couldn't cover every corner of the universe. Of course, he also said that the Guardians of the Galaxy may not have been formed yet, Sif added. Hearing this, Thor was instantly unhappy. Is he playing with us? I don't think so. He might not know whether the Guardians of the Galaxy have been established or if they are at a critical moment of formation. If not, he pointed out a star field. Xandar Star, Sif said. Heimdall nodded. I know that place. It is a highly developed civilization planet, and they have a powerful legion called Nova Corps. If Rocket Raccoon hasn't joined you, the Guardians of the Galaxy, then he would still be a cosmic bounty hunter, with a huge tree man by his side, Sif continued. Traint? Planet X? That is a... Thor trailed off, deep in thought. The violent group is notorious for occupying surrounding planets, oppressing slaves, and using violence to control violence. They have traveled to many planets, capturing races under the banner of the Empire. On their own planet, they conduct experiments under the guise of science. Heimdall nodded. But the planet Traint has already been destroyed, or at least it should be. Should? Thor frowned. According to what I know, it was destroyed by an even more brutal legion. However, it seems there are still survivors, Heimdall explained. Thor, uninterested in the demise of the Traint planet, turned to Sif. Did he mention why he wants to find Rocket Raccoon? Can he help locate the ether particle, or... Sif shook her head. I don't know. He didn't specify, but I think he implied it has something to do with the ether particle appearing. After it appears, I see, Thor said, then flew off. He galloped all the way to Asgard. Father, he called out. God King World Tree, the guard acknowledged. I see, Thor said, flying again. Father, he called out once more. You're so hasty. It doesn't suit my eldest son who has returned victorious, Odin remarked with a glance. Father, don't tease me. I have something important to ask. Do you know about ether particles? Thor asked. Odin frowned. Where did you hear about that? Duke mentioned it. He said the ether particle is about to appear, but he didn't specify when, Thor explained. Odin fell silent, seemingly nostalgic for the days of battle. After a moment, he spoke. There are substances left over from before the formation of the universe. The 9 realms are not static. They have dawn and dusk. Before dawn, dark forces ruled the world, dominated by the dark elves. I know this story. Mother told me when I was a child, Thor said. Their leader is Malekith, whom you once mentioned. He used darkness to create a weapon called ether, which should be the ether particle. Unlike other cosmic remnants that are usually stone-like, the ether is liquid. It transforms various substances into darkness, seeks a host to live in, and absorbs energy from the host's life, Odin explained. Malekith tried to use the power of the ether to return the universe to darkness. But after an indomitable and bloody battle, my father, your grandfather Bor, finally won, securing peace that lasted for thousands of years. It seems they are trying to rise again, Thor said. End of this chapter. Chapter 304, Ether Particles Really Appeared. It's still the same question. Are you sure the Dark Elves have really disappeared? Thor asked. The same question, but this time the answer was different. I'm not so sure now, Odin replied, frowning. After returning from the Battle of New York, although he had heard the name Malekith from his son, he was confident that the Dark Elves had been eradicated. But now, hearing the name Ether Particle again made him uncertain. The war back then was brutal. It now seemed that the Dark Elves might have taken advantage of their unpreparedness and escaped. What if Duke really saw something? Maybe. Guyi could prove it? Forget it. In that case, Father, Loki must be locked up. He cannot be seen outside. Asgard is about to face its greatest challenge in thousands of years. Thor said, frowning deeply. At that moment, he received a notification from Heimdall. Jane Foster had disappeared from his sight. Meanwhile, on Earth, peace reigned. At the X-Men Academy, a pair of very different sisters arrived. Phantom Cat, Katie couldn't stop turning left and right, looking at the pair of twins in front of her with extreme curiosity. Are you really not twin sisters? Of course not, one replied. Not really, the other echoed. That's really strange. Living in New York together, there are 2 people who look exactly the same, one from the south and one from the north. Tsk, tsk. Katie laughed and joked. That's right, one was Miss Fox Michaela, and the other was Miss Fox O'Neill. One was the heroine of Transformers, and the other was the heroine of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Are you a reporter? Katie asked. Yes, O'Neill confirmed. Well, our X-Men Academy generally does not accept interviews, but for Michaela's sake, we can make an exception for you, Katie said. Michaela puffed up her chest immediately, feeling more respectable than straight, even though they both looked the same. That's really an honor, O'Neill said, not feeling ashamed at all. Cyclops Scott had just come out of Raven's office. Seeing 2 people who looked exactly the same, he glanced down the corridor in confusion, then turned to Katie. Tell me, one of them isn't Raven. Guess what? Katie smiled mischievously. Cyclops. At this time, Hank also came out. When he saw the 2 identical people, he immediately gasped, Raven? Ha ha ha! Katie immediately squatted on the ground, clutching her stomach. I'm dying of laughter. Ha ha ha! It's not Raven, but they're not twins either. No. Not twins? The 2 were dumbfounded at the same time. If it wasn't Raven, fine, but if they weren't twins, wasn't it incredible? Seeing Cyclops come out, O'Neill excitedly ran forward and asked with a tape recorder, Hello, Mr. Scott, I'm a reporter, and I want to interview you. Does your appearance cause any inconvenience in life? For example, when you kiss. Cyclops' face was full of embarrassment. She went straight to the heart of the matter. Ahem! Ah! Hank the Beast laughed heartily, almost squatting on the ground and patting it. You handle this yourself, he said, laughing as he left. Rachel, Scott called, and Rachel, who was playing with a ball in the distance, flew directly over. This made O'Neill's mouth drop open. Even though she already knew about mutants' extraordinary abilities, witnessing them firsthand was completely different. Daddy! Rachel slammed into Scott's arms with such force that she almost knocked him over. Good girl, Scott said, pampering his daughter's head, his face full of happiness. This is Mater, Rachel. Do you think it will affect anything? His attitude was already very cold. If he hadn't seen Michaela walking together, he would have left a long time ago. However, O'Neill was a reporter. Although she hadn't interviewed many big shots, she had dealt with more difficult people and was not afraid at all. "Please don't avoid the question. I'm talking about kissing," O'Neill pressed. Scott was embarrassed. There was indeed a problem with this. After all, his eyes. The glasses are dangerous and cannot be opened, otherwise Jean will be in danger. Although even if Cyclops is fired, it is most likely to be absorbed by Jean, but he will not do such a thing. So, the end result of wearing the glasses kiss is often touching Jean's forehead, nose, and so on. Slightly embarrassing. "Sister, you are a bad person," little Rachel in Scott's arms scolded before he could speak. If it wasn't for Daddy and Mummy's constant emphasis on not hurting others, she would have smothered O'Neill's face with a fireball long ago. Now it was O'Neill's turn to be embarrassed. Scott was very happy and left with his daughter in his arms, replying, "I won't close my eyes." There was a sense of self-inflicted irony in this sentence. In fact, in everyday life, Scott is the passive party because he doesn't see. Wearing glasses will knock into Jean, so when doing such things, he often closes his eyes. Anyway, if you close your eyes, you won't be able to kiss. Of course, after a long time, it will become a bit awkward. If Jean were here, she would definitely beat him up. "Are you an idiot? You'd better take it easy." Michaela shook her head speechlessly. "This is the X-Men Academy. Be careful, or they'll knock you out. Let's go. I'll take you to see Principal Raven." "What's the point of interviewing the principal as soon as you arrive? You go first. I'll interview the students here," O'Neill said, scuttling out like a rabbit. "Hey, you. You pay attention to yourself." "Understood." Michaela shook her head and decided to meet with Raven first, lest O'Neill cause trouble in the college and cannot be dealt with. For O'Neill, who is younger than her, Michaela has always treated her as a younger sister. Forget it. Let her go. Meanwhile, in England, Jane Foster, who had disappeared for 5 hours, finally reappeared. In the heavy rain, she found Thor not far away and walked over, slapping him. "Thor, I ran all the way here, and you just slapped me? Shouldn't it be a kiss? Earth TV dramas fooled me too. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure you're real. It's been a weird day today." "I am real, Jane." Slap. Another slap. "Thor, where did you go?" "I was at the place where we parted. I waited hard, crying while waiting. Then I went out to find you. You said you would come back." "Sorry, the Rainbow Bridge has been destroyed, and the 9 realms are in chaos. Wars are raging everywhere. I must end the war first." End of this chapter. Chapter 305, The King's Conversation. Inside Karajan, Duke smiled mysteriously. It seems that a good show is about to be staged. He pondered how the plots of Thor 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy might change. Thor might go to Rocket Raccoon and take him to Asgard, causing the Guardians of the Galaxy to lose a valuable member and a treat who can only say, "I am Groot." Without Rocket, Star-Lord's team might not even form. As for Asgard, perhaps Frigga won't die? Well, some guarantees still need to be made. In the X-Men Academy, Raven looked curiously at the identical twins in front of her, puzzled by their striking resemblance. Michaela sipped her tea quietly, seemingly trying to adopt the same hobby as Duke. O'Neill had been captured by Quicksilver. If she wasn't caught, this woman would turn the X-Academy upside down. She interviewed every mutant she encountered as if she wanted to expose the Academy completely. Raven understood the mentality of this little reporter. She was eager to catch a big story and become famous overnight. Judging by her demeanor, she seemed to be planning a long-form serial report. "I'm sorry," O'Neill apologized sincerely, having been caught and forced to confess. Raven waved her hand indifferently. "It doesn't matter, but before you publish the manuscript, you have to let me review it. I'll tell you which parts can't be published." "Okay, I understand. So can we start the interview?" O'Neill asked excitedly. "You have a big appetite," Hank remarked, clicking his lips. "It's hard to come to the X-Men Academy once, and if I don't interview the dean, it would be a failure. I'm ready for a 10-part series," O'Neill said, clenching her fist. "This time, I must get famous." Raven and Hank exchanged a glance. Raven knew that Michaela had been entangled with Duke since the Los Angeles incident years ago. She was the type who dared to love and act boldly, never giving up until she achieved her goal. She was persistent. As for Duke, his attitude towards her was ambiguous, seemingly indifferent, yet always helping her at critical moments. No one knew what the future held, and now an almost identical person had appeared, making the atmosphere much more subtle. "Go ahead," Raven said, picking up her coffee and taking a sip. "As the dean, you must be very busy, right?" O'Neill began. "Of course," Raven replied. "As far as I know, you and Vice President Hank are not married?" O'Neill asked, diving straight to the point. Although O'Neill wanted to catch a big story, she knew it wasn't her place to report on the major news of the X-Academy. For one, the Academy cooperated with the government, and professional news organizations handled some reports on their actions. Secondly, the Academy wouldn't disclose such matters to her. Thirdly, the Academy had been in the public eye for almost 40 years, leaving little new to uncover. Therefore, O'Neill focused on personal lives and gossip, knowing the public loved celebrity news, and mutants at Academy X were more intriguing than celebrities. Hank never expected the war to be on his side. Raven hesitated for a moment, glanced at Hank, and said, "Before asking this question, you should understand our perspective. Our mutants' habitual behaviors are different from normal humans. Marriage might be important to you, but it's not as significant to us." "But you are very loving, aren't you? Don't you want children?" O'Neill pressed. "You don't need to get married to have children," Raven replied. "Oh," O'Neill scratched her head. The logic seemed correct, but something felt off. "We haven't seen Professor X for a long time. Has Dean Raven ever thought of bringing him back? After all, he should be almost 80 years old now." O'Neill posed another tricky question. Hank's expression froze, and Michaela rolled her eyes. "This sister is really naughty. Everyone knows that these three are in a love triangle. Ruin likes Professor X, and Hank likes Ruin. Doesn't it mean that Professor X likes Hank? After all, he's also an old man from Academy X, right? And he's getting old. Even if he has made mistakes, it's all in the past, isn't it?" O'Neill made another pointed remark. "I've always had this idea. He is my brother. Of course, I want to call him back. It's a pity that we have no news of his whereabouts," Ruin said. Hank breathed a sigh of relief. "Big brother is fine. He doesn't mind having multiple uncles. It's okay to change from elder brother to eldest uncle. If you are that kind of tricky reporter, you will definitely ask, are you trying to evade, to make excuses for yourself, but in fact, you don't want to call people back, and so on. But O'Neill just wants to find some gossip for the time being. There are eyewitnesses claiming to have seen him near the island of Magneto. I think there should be a connection between you. Could it be?" O'Neill glanced at the two playfully. "This child is not cute," Ruin frowned. "Eric has his own choices. We haven't contacted each other for a long time." Asgard. In Odin's palace, a portal suddenly appeared right next to Odin's seat. At this time, Odin was having afternoon tea. "Duke?" "It really took a while to decipher your defense data here." Duke was also drinking afternoon tea. "Ragnarok is coming soon. Aren't you nervous?" "Although there are still a few years, right? This time it was the invasion of the Dark Elves. From Duke's point of view, this was already the beginning of Ragnarok. If it comes, let it be. What should come will always come, won't it? Just like you, I have been waiting for you for a long time," Odin said, as expected of the king of the gods. "However, the ether particle has already appeared, and your wife is about to perish, so you will still be so calm?" Duke laughed. He didn't like this kind of stable-as-a-dog attitude. "Although we live a long life, we will die one day. We are not gods, and we will die. But dying and being stabbed to death with a sword, I think you should choose the former one?" Duke was very upset. This old guy didn't have a good life for a few years. There is really a feeling of, the Emperor is not in a hurry, but the eunuch is in a hurry. According to what I see in the future, the Dark Elves will invade soon, and then break the shield defense of your Asgard, allowing the army of Dark Elves to enter Asgard. In this battle, your wife, Frigga, will die protecting someone. Odin finally changed his expression. End of this chapter. Chapter 3-6, Expulsion. On the other hand, Thor had brought Jane Foster back to Asgard. Unfortunately, he was unaware that the unknown substance in Jane Foster's body was the ether particle, and he had inadvertently brought it back to Asgard. This is non-Earth matter. Have you seen it before? Thor asked. I've never seen it before, but the energy churning in her body is enough to kill her, replied the healer. Just as Thor was processing this information, Odin entered the room, his voice stern. My words fall on deaf ears with you, don't they? She's ill, Thor explained. She's immortal, and of course, mortals get sick, Odin retorted. I brought her here because we could help her, Thor insisted. She cannot enter the halls of our Asgard, just like some dishes cannot be served on the table, Odin declared. He had never liked Jane Foster, preferring Sif as a daughter-in-law. Feeling insulted, Jane Foster snapped, Why? Who do you think you are? This was one of the reasons Duke didn't like her. She was proud and arrogant, daring to speak so disrespectfully in the realm of the gods. It was like a rabbit challenging a lion. Jane Foster felt emboldened because of her connection to Thor, but she failed to recognize the gravity of the situation. I am Odin, king of the gods, protector of the 9 realms, Odin proclaimed. Oh, I know who you are, Jane Foster retorted. There is a substance in her. Father, a substance I have never seen before, Thor interjected. I know, ether particles, Odin said, glaring at Jane. What? Thor was stunned. Father, are you sure? Of course. I've already spoken to Duke, Odin confirmed. He then turned to Jane Foster. You should remember entering a strange space and finding a liquid object emitting red light, right? And that liquid entered your body through your hand. Jane Foster was stunned, and then a wave of severe pain hit her. Yeah. She clutched her head in agony. Jane. Thor rushed to her side. I remember now, indeed, Jane murmured. Humph, ignorant woman, do you know how much trouble you have caused? My father, Bor, led an army in a bloody battle to defeat the evil dark elves and buried the ether particle deep in the ground, never to see the light of day. But because of you, it has reappeared, setting off a new wave of chaos, Odin said indignantly. Thor tried to defend Jane. Father, she's just... That's right. She just wants to study the secrets of the Rainbow Bridge and be with you. Do you think she is right? Because of her reckless behavior, Asgard will pay with tens of thousands of innocent lives. When that time comes, how will you face the people of Asgard? Have you thought about this? Odin scolded. Jane Foster was taken aback. She had indeed been selfish, first studying the Rainbow Bridge for her science prize, and later to be with Thor. But she never imagined that her research could lead to such catastrophic consequences. These are all things that haven't happened yet. Who can say what will happen in the future? You are blaming without reason. Jane Foster tried to defend herself. It is precisely because it hasn't happened yet that I am being so lenient with you. If it really happened, even if you sacrificed your life to atone for those dead souls, what would be the point? Ignorant mortals trying to touch the power of the gods. Can you bear the possible responsibility? Odin gave Jane Foster a cold look. Guards, send her back. Wait, Jane Foster still wanted to argue. Aren't you the king of the gods? The guardian of the 9 realms, including Earth, right? By that count, aren't I also your subject? Shouldn't you protect me too? Odin paused for a moment, then said lightly, One of my sons made a mistake, and now he is locked in prison. Do you think you are above the consequences? She will never be released. Jane Foster was furious. Thor was also conflicted. He thought bringing Jane to Asgard would mean bringing back the ether particles. Duke had clearly told him that the emergence of the ether particle would cause serious damage to Asgard. But, take her back immediately. Malekith can sense the existence of the ether particles, Odin commanded. Don't we care about her? If we send her back, the Dark Elves will find her. When the convergence begins, Malekith will use the power of the ether particles to plunge the world into darkness, Thor argued. Or you can go and look for Rocket Raccoon. He can't stay here, Odin said, giving his son a fierce look. I don't care what you want to do with her. As for me, I have to prepare for the battle against the Dark Elf invasion. If you want to protect your people, you must be willing to make sacrifices. The choice is yours. With that, Odin turned to leave. As he reached the door, he added, Malekith may invade Asgard at any time. The Dark Elves could already be here. Then he left completely. The atmosphere was tense. Jane Foster gritted her teeth and whispered, I'm sorry, It's not your fault. I know you just wanted to find me. Duke said that Asgard would be invaded, but it hasn't happened yet. As you said, Things that haven't happened can't be blamed on you, Thor reassured her, shaking his head. Duke? I know him. He's great, right? Jane asked. Thor nodded. Actually, you trust him, don't you? Jane Foster's face darkened. Thor didn't speak. He did trust Duke. It was too coincidental. He always thought he wouldn't bring the ether particles to Asgard, but he never imagined he would end up doing so in this way. Duke had predicted several disasters, all of which had come true. Whether he liked it or not, he couldn't lie to himself. What is Rocket Raccoon? Jane asked. Duke said that if the ether particles showed up, I should go to Rocket Raccoon. He said Rocket Raccoon could help me, Thor explained with a bitter smile. It seems that Rocket Raccoon can extract the ether particles from your body. It was obvious. Odin repeatedly emphasized that if Jane Foster was sent back, it meant he couldn't extract the ether particles. According to Duke, Rocket Raccoon should have a solution. Then send me to him. I don't want to go back to Earth, Jane Foster said, finally showing some consideration. It wasn't just that she didn't want to bring trouble to Earth. She didn't want to face Duke. After all, he was someone who had already seen through her. End of this chapter. Chapter 307. Thor's Dilemma. Thor hesitated for a moment and shook his head. Sorry, Jane. I need to concentrate on dealing with the invasion of the Dark Elves right now. Then I will stay here and face it with you. Although I don't have any power, I want to be closer to you, Jane Foster said, sensing something amiss and feeling uneasy. If you stay here, I can't take care of you. I can send you to Karazhan, where you don't have to worry about safety, Thor replied. Karazhan again, this third party who destroyed the relationship between us. Jane Foster was angry. Do you despise me? Think I'm a burden? Do you believe that if I stay here, it will attract the Dark Elves? Is that why you want to send me to Earth, so the Dark Elves will divert their attention and attack there? You don't care about my safety at all. Thor frowned. Why do you think that? It's true I have considered diverting the threat, but I'm not sure if the Dark Elves will follow us to Earth. Earth, like Asgard, is dangerous. Then what else am I supposed to think? Jane retorted. Karazhan's defensive power is not weaker than Asgard's. Sending you there can also avoid the attack of the Dark Elves. Although that Rocket Raccoon might be able to extract the ether particles from your body, I don't know where he is now. He's a cosmic bounty hunter with traces on every planet. Jane Foster was silent. Do you know where Xandar is? It's the most frequently haunted star. According to your Earth calculations, it's 10 times the distance of the Andromeda galaxy. 10 times? Jane Foster was shocked. The Andromeda galaxy, the farthest satellite galaxy from the Milky Way, is 300 million light-years away. 10 times that distance would be 3 billion light-years. What does that even mean? Jane Foster's mind was in turmoil. Although Asgard is a powerful realm, it cannot control the entire universe. Among the major cosmic forces, many are stronger than Asgard. If I take a spaceship to Xandar, it would take at least 10 years to go back and forth. Using cosmic jumps and wormholes might shorten the time, but it would still take days. What's more, I don't know if I can find that Rocket Raccoon. Jane, in this situation, should I abandon my people and lead you to find that vague hope, or put you in a safe place and deal with the crisis first? Jane Foster felt Thor's anger and guilt welled up inside her. She lowered her head. I'm sorry, You just didn't think it through, Thor said, shaking his head. I didn't think it through either. Let's go. We'll talk about it later. It's urgent now. Thor picked Jane up and flew towards Heimdall. Although she was in his arms, Jane Foster couldn't feel any warmth. For some reason, she sensed that Thor's feelings for her had changed. Thor thought she was being unreasonable. At this critical moment, she was still thinking about trivial matters. Even though he knew Jane Foster was just worried about him, he suddenly realized that what his father had said made sense. With different lifespans, their perspectives would also differ. For Asgardians who live for thousands of years, there are many things to do, and love is not the main focus. For humans, with a lifespan of only 100 years, love is very important. Heimdall, Thor yelled as he flew closer. Send me to Karazhan. Be careful, the Dark Elves may invade at any time. What did the God King say? I understand. Heimdall nodded, then opened the portal and sent them to Earth, landing just outside Karazhan. Karajan has a protective force, and the Rainbow Bridge cannot reach it directly. Duke, Thor called out, but no one responded. Duke! Duke! Thor shouted again, and in frustration, he swung his hammer, which was deflected by the protective barrier. In the back, Jane Foster was stunned. In her perception, Thor was incredibly strong. In New Mexico, he had triggered a thunderstorm that directly smashed a large armored man. But in front of Karajan, he seemed like a child. Duke had a headache. He never thought things old change like this. He had expected Thor to go find Rocket Raccoon and then mess up the plot of the Guardians of the Galaxy. But this turn of events was unexpected. However, Thor's approach wasn't entirely surprising. The awakened Dark Elves were about to invade, and it was impossible for him to take Jane Foster on a journey across the universe. Of course, Rocket Raccoon wasn't the only one who could make that kind of instrument. Tony Stark could probably do it too. Go and bring the man, Duke ordered. How about let him hang out for a while? Samir, who hadn't been active for a long time, laughed. Just go, Duke insisted. All right, right away, Samir replied, quickly flying out. He opened the passage and looked at the two people outside with a slightly displeased expression. Are you really here? Fine, follow me, and be careful not to go the wrong way. Without waiting for a response, he turned around and left. After seeing the true master, Thor gritted his teeth. Duke, I owe you a favor this time. You already owe me a lot of favors, Duke replied. Then, since it's already a lot, one more won't hurt, Thor said. Jane Foster was a little nervous, but also a bit angry. Seeing Duke on the throne, she really wanted to slap him. Are you trying to leave someone here with me? She asked. Yes, until the Dark Elves' troubles are resolved, Thor said. Duke shook his head. I can allow you to hide someone here, but it doesn't make any sense. The Dark Elves have been sleeping for thousands of years and don't know the changes on Earth. They call themselves Old Lords. They are very proud and arrogant, and they don't take Earth seriously. If you think of causing water to the east, you may be disappointed. The Dark Elves can't sense the ether particles. I'm afraid they will kill you to ask for it. After all, before he could finish, Jane Foster became angry. Hey, who are you calling a disaster? A silver light flashed, and with a click, Jane Foster's left arm was cut off in one swift motion. Blood spurted everywhere. Jane didn't realize what had happened at first, but a moment later, she fell to the ground in pain. The agony of a broken arm was piercing, and she almost fainted from the pain. Jane! Thor was also terrified. He never thought that Duke would act so decisively and without hesitation. What place do you think this is? Samir sneered, showing no remorse. In the past 100 years, the number of heads he had removed was beyond count. I'm no good-tempered Odin. Please take your place, Jane Foster, Duke declared. End of this chapter. Chapter 308, Because of You. Seeing his girlfriend fall to the ground, covered in blood, Thor panicked. He didn't dare to act. Although lightning could cauterize the wound and stop the bleeding, it could also kill her. Jane Foster could not withstand the force of thunder and lightning. After howling for a while, Jane Foster fainted. It was unclear whether it was from the pain or the blood loss. Thor gripped his hammer tightly, sparks crackling around his body. Oh, you want to challenge me? Young man, you are very confident, but you don't seem to have much time, Duke said, tilting his head and smiling. He waved his hand, and a green light floated out towards the severed arm of Jane Foster. The next moment, life blooms. On the section of the broken arm, bone stubble, granulation, and tendon tubes grew rapidly, intertwining with each other and gradually forming a brand new arm. Samir's face was full of shock. The severed limb regenerated, truly the work of a master. The arm grew back in the blink of an eye. Junior sister Jennifer, who also inherited the druid's talent, could do this, but it would take her at least a week, and Master Duke did it in less than a minute. Jane Foster awoke again in pain. The regeneration of severed limbs was much more painful than amputating an arm. If giving birth is grade 11 pain, this was grade 12, painful and itchy. In less than a minute, she felt as if she had passed through a steamer, drenched all over. My hand grew back again? Thor finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Duke didn't want Jane's life, but just wanted to teach her a lesson. At the same time, He also admired Duke's ability. This kind of miraculous feat, even his father, the king, couldn't do it. He was also thankful that he didn't start a fight with Duke. However, Duke seemed to be very disgusted with Jane. "Jane Foster, watch your attitude when you talk to me. I'm not Thor, and I don't have time for your young lady's temper. You're here to avoid disaster, to pray for protection, and you're nothing. Who do you think you are?" Duke snorted coldly. "I have a bad impression of you. Here, you'd better put your tail between your legs. I don't guarantee that I won't cut off your head next time." The frightened Jane Foster suddenly shivered and hid behind Thor in fear, clutching Thor's cloak pitifully. "I don't want to stay here. I don't want, she whimpered, clearly terrified. Thor frowned, turned around, and pressed Jane's shoulder to comfort her. "Stay here. You are safe." Safe? He was. Jane Foster pointed at Duke angrily, but the next second she trembled again because Duke was looking at her with dead eyes. Terrifying. "I don't have time to take care of you. You stay here. As long as you stay safe, you'll be fine. After I eliminate the danger of invasion, I will come to pick you up," Thor comforted. He wanted to leave now. Asgard could fall into a dangerous situation at any time, and he really didn't have time for love. Why? Why can't I stay in Asgard? I don't need protection. Just let me stay there. I don't want to stay here. I will die if I stay here. Duke sneered. "Stay in Asgard, and the mother of your boyfriend Thor will die because of you." Hiccup. Thor's heart skipped a beat. Duke had sent word to him that the ether had entered Asgard and that his mother would die in the invasion. He had forgotten and only cared about his girlfriend, never thinking about the consequences of bringing the ether particles to Asgard. He also forgot about his mother's death, focusing solely on his girlfriend's safety. He didn't react until now. You are talking nonsense. You are lying to me," Jane Foster said impatiently. "Ignorance." Duke raised his hand to seal Jane Foster's mouth. "I have no time, no mood, and no need to explain anything to you, because there is no need." After speaking, he looked at Thor again. The original future looked like this. Your mother. Thor was very worried about her safety, so he deliberately protected her, choosing to use illusions to deceive Malekith when he came to the door. Of course, Malekith was furious, which ultimately led to the death of your mother, Frigg. Thor's heart trembled. He knew his mother well enough to believe she would do such a thing. His grip on Jane Foster's shoulders loosened, a change noticed by the keen Jane. She whimpered, wanting to defend herself, but her mouth was sealed, leaving her only able to stare wide-eyed, trying to convey her innocence through her eyes. "Of course, your brother Loki also played a part in this," Duke continued. "Loki?" Thor turned around abruptly, completely letting go of Jane Foster. What did this mean? "Yes, Loki. Asgard is a strong fortress. Attacking it from the outside would result in heavy losses. The best way is to disintegrate it from within," Duke explained. Thor was anxious. "This is impossible. Loki has been locked in prison. He can't leave at all." "Yes, but he told the intruders in the prison that Malekith had deliberately arranged to enter. He broke the defenses of the prison, released a group of prisoners, and incited them to fight with the Asgard guards. And the intruder, it was at Loki's suggestion that they broke Asgard's defensive shield." With every word Duke spoke, Thor felt a chill in his heart. He knew his restless brother was capable of such treachery. It was also because of Loki's guidance that the shield was destroyed, allowing the army of dark elves to flood Asgard, which led to your mother's death. Jane Foster stared wide-eyed, trying to convey, "Look, I'm just an introduction, and I'm innocent." Duke cut off her hope with a cold snort. "If you hadn't insisted on researching something beyond your ability, how could this disaster have happened?" Jane whimpered again. "The most important thing is that you took her and Loki to find Malekith because Loki knew how to leave. During the battle with Malekith, Loki died." Thor's heart trembled again. "Of course, you were deceived by him once more. You went to solve the trouble of the ether particles, and Loki took the opportunity to return to Asgard. He took advantage of Odin's surprise, attacked him, and exiled his mana to Earth. This indirectly led to Odin's death within a year or two, triggering Ragnarok." Thor went mad with denial. "No, it's impossible. It's impossible." Jane Foster's eyes widened even more. This string of events seemed to be getting worse and worse. Duke slowly stood up. Actually, you already believe it in your heart. You know the probability of this happening is very high. Do you know why I have a bad impression of her? It's not because of her, but because of you. Me? Thor was stunned. End of this chapter. Chapter 309, Dark Elf Invasion. Me? Thor was stunned. Because of me? What? Because Jane Foster dumped you after the Dark Elf Invasion. Thor froze. What? Jane Foster was also taken aback, then whimpered. It was not a good sign. She wanted to argue, but unfortunately, no one seemed to respond to her. After whining for a while, she finally got discouraged and gave up. Jane, dumped me? Thor shook his head. The things in the future haven't happened yet, so we can't blame someone in advance for this. Jane Foster finally breathed a sigh of relief, but then froze again. Can't be ahead of time. Is she still to blame? She felt sad. It's hard for me to say exactly. You can judge for yourself. As he spoke, Duke manifested a scene. It was a scene from Thor Ragnarok, where Thor dragged Loki to find Odin, only to discover that the nursing home was demolished. Then, two passerby girls approached Thor to take a photo. I'm sorry Jane dumped you, said one of the girls. She didn't dump me. I dumped her. We dumped each other, Thor replied. Jane Foster's eyes widened as she looked from Duke to Thor, as if to say, see? I didn't dump you. You dumped me. Or we dumped each other. In the video, Loki, dressed in a black suit, patted Thor on the shoulder as a sign of comfort. Immediately, an orange light circle appeared under Loki's feet, and then he fell to the ground and disappeared, leaving only a piece of paper. Thor poked it with his umbrella suspiciously, then bent down to pick up the piece of paper, and the shot ended there. Judging from your body language of hesitation, vacillation, and erratic eyes, it's obvious that you are trying to hold on. The possibility of Jane dumping you is more than 80%, Duke said. Jane Foster stared at Duke with wide eyes. Are you serious? Also, what are these things? Can I say that these are all your own lies? It's Loki. Where did he go? What's that piece of paper? Thor frowned. He didn't believe this video clip. Peeking into the future was unbelievable, and showing the future in front of him was even more so. Compared to this, he cared more about Loki's problems. Despite Duke's prophecy that Loki indirectly killed their mother, Thor was still worried about his brother. Duke waved his hand dismissively. That's not important. It's a place name, 177A, Bleecker Street. Thor frowned, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. I know what you are thinking. I can also tell you that it is the location of the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York, one of the 3 sanctums of Camartage. The name Ancient One should ring a bell, right? Duke said. Thor shook his head. Duke sighed, realizing that Thor really didn't know about the magicians on Earth. When he saw Doctor Strange in Thor Ragnarok, he had asked, there are wizards on Earth too? Of course, that was in the original plot. Now that Duke, a magician, had already appeared, things were different. Loki was taken away by Doctor Strange because he was on the Doctor's blacklist of individuals who might threaten Earth's stability. But don't worry, he will be released soon. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left you an address, Duke explained. Doctor Strange is... Thor frowned. He's not yet born as Doctor Strange. He is still an ordinary person, a professional doctor. Judging from the future timeline, he should soon embark on the path of magic, Duke said, shrugging. Of course, in order to protect your mother, the future has changed a lot. Whether he can still become Doctor Strange is hard to say, as fate has been rewritten. Thor was speechless. A person who hasn't appeared yet? Are humans already this powerful? A human being who has only been on the path of magic for a few years can trap Loki. This is incredible. Why did you save my mother? Thor asked. Could it be that Duke had an affair with them? It shouldn't be. His mother had never left Asgard. In the past 100 years, no one had managed to gain an advantage over Duke. It was impossible for him to have another stepdad. You seem to be thinking about something impolite. Duke frowned, then let go and said with emotion, Don't misunderstand. Your mother Frigga and I have been good friends for many years, but she doesn't know me. I am Frigga's friend from another universe. What? Thor's eyes gradually widened. The mother of another dimension? Well, that's not wrong. Duke did become friends with Frigga when he entered the Star Realm. The younger version of Frigga had not yet married Odin. The Star Realm is very magical, and to this day, Duke has not figured out whether it was a big dream or if it really happened. Young Frigga was beautiful, but Duke didn't have the ability as a psychic, so he wasn't Thor's stepdad. Could it be? Thor began, but Duke waved his hand dismissively. Your time is running out, Thor. The Dark Elves have begun to invade Asgard. What? Jane, you stay here first. Thor was startled, but quickly comforted Jane. Then he raised his head and shouted, Heimdall, Heimdall. At this time in Asgard, Heimdall still stood at the end of the Rainbow Bridge, conscientiously abiding by his duties. He sensed something was wrong, but his eyes couldn't see it. Even so, his ears heard the wind. He chased it fiercely and finally defeated a Dark Elf spaceship. Just when he breathed a sigh of relief, he realized it was a trick to divert his attention. The enemy had let him hear it on purpose to attract his attention and take the opportunity to invade with large troops. Heimdall was depressed as countless Dark Elf spaceships were projected, flying towards Asgard. It was too late to intercept them. At that moment, he received Thor's call and quickly opened the portal. Seconds later, Thor returned to Asgard. How's the situation? Thor asked urgently. Heimdall sighed. The situation is not optimistic. The Dark Elves have invaded, and I didn't notice it at all. Be careful. Their spaceships seem to have the ability to hide their whereabouts. Prison. Thinking of Duke's warning, Thor was about to fly away in a hurry. Hurry back. I'm about to activate Asgard's defenses, Heimdall shouted. I'll leave the outside to you. I'll come to support you after dealing with the enemies inside. With that, Thor swung his hammer and rose into the air. A few seconds later, Heimdall inserted the great sword vigorously, and the internal defense of Asgard was activated. End of this chapter. Chapter 310, Dark Elf Invasion Karazhan. Jane Foster never imagined that Thor would actually leave her in this magical den. She felt somewhat safe when Thor was around, but now she felt like she was in a refrigerator, shivering all over. She wanted to run, but didn't dare to. She knew it was useless to run. Samir, take her down. You can do anything to her, Duke said with a smirk. Suddenly, Jane Foster's mind froze. Hey! Samir made a devilish expression on purpose, wiggling his tongue. Boss, what kind of anything is it? Of course, it's something like that, Duke also smirked. Jane Foster was like a frightened lamb, clutching her chest and stepping back. You, don't come here. I warn you, if you dare to do anything to me, Thor will definitely not let you get away with it. She's all yours, Duke said, losing interest in scaring the ignorant woman. He got up and left. Samir was the only one left in the hall. His appearance was slightly exaggerated and evil. Under the dim light, he grinned like a ghoul crawling out of the abyss of hell. While grinning, he walked towards the frightened Jane Foster. Hey, just follow me. I will make you happy, he said. You? Don't come here. Thor won't let you go. Jane Foster continued to back away. Woman, you are so stupid. Do you think that guy will still want you as his girlfriend after knowing this? Don't deceive yourself. He doesn't want you anymore. For the sake of your beauty, I will accept you as hard as I can, and I guarantee that you will be very happy every night. Samir continued to advance, continuing to scare her. You, Thor won't. If you dare to touch me, Thor will strike you with lightning. Jane Foster clung to this last hope, not letting go. Because once she let go, she was truly finished. Cut. Even if Thor can beat me, so what? I've already done this to you. Even if he beats me, what will change? Woman, you still haven't recognized your situation or my position. Samir shook his head. How foolish to think that leaning on Thor's protection would make you truly fearless. Sorry, but you're really going to be scared. Little lamb, don't run away. Follow me. Samir transformed into a vampire bat demon and pounced. You don't. Jane Foster fell to the ground with her head tilted, fainting from fright. Isn't this too frightening? Samir looked at Jane Foster, who had collapsed on the ground, and scratched his head speechlessly. He knew that the master didn't really want him to harm her. It was purely to frighten her and give this naive woman a memory. Who would have thought she would faint from fear? Of course, the main reason was that she was already sweating and a little exhausted. She was drenched with sweat, her hair in locks, and she smelled sour all over her body. No matter how good-looking she was, she couldn't keep her composure in this state. Samir, are you going too far? Leanne came out from the side, curling her lips. Second sister, what do you know? I'm teaching her a lesson in honor of Master. Do you think I really want to accept her? Tsk, I'm the head chef of Heaven's Kitchen. How many sexy and beautiful actresses are there waiting in line for my favor? Samir pouted, feeling indignant that his aesthetic preferences were being questioned. Ch! Who knows if you're serious? Leon snorted. You're thinking too much. Samir shook his head, grabbed Jane Foster with one hand, and carried her to a distant guest room. He threw her on the bed and turned to leave. At the door, Samir hesitated for a moment, then turned back with a dangerous smile. He raised his hand and made a few quick gestures. Perfect, he said happily, then turned and left. Jane Foster, still unconscious, had no idea she had been exposed. It was conceivable that when she woke up, she would scream again. Asgard at this. Thor flew swiftly, and upon arriving at Asgard, he noticed the defensive shield was raised. Where is the queen? He demanded. Master Frigga is in the bedroom, an Asgardian guard responded hastily. In a flash of lightning, Thor rushed towards the bedroom. Mother, mother! Thor? Frigga looked up, slightly dazed at the sight of her son. Has he been sent back? In truth, she had not supported sending Jane Foster away. She had hoped to keep Jane in Asgard and seek a cure for her. Of course, those in the know had kept this from her. Yes, mother, but you should hide, Thor said anxiously. Frigga smiled gently. My son, although I have lost most of my strength, I am not powerless. Do what you must. Thor gritted his teeth, wanting to persuade her further, but then he remembered something Duke had said. Any invaders would aim to destroy Asgard's defenses. He turned and rushed out. Mother, please stay here. Wait for me to resolve this, he called back as he left, lightning crackling around him. When he arrived at the main control room, the Asgardian defense device was still intact. Thor decided to stay there and wait. As long as the defenses held, Asgard would be safe. He trusted Fandral, Volstagg, Hogun, Sif, and the Asgardian guards to handle the prisoners in the cells. Once the internal threat was neutralized, he could focus on the dark elves outside. For now, he needed to deal with the invading, cursed warrior. As long as Asgard's defenses remained unbroken, there was no need to worry about the Dark Elves' spaceship bombarding them. It didn't take long. In less than 3 minutes, Thor saw a strong Viking-like man with a mask approaching. The man exuded a fierce aura, clearly not someone to be trifled with. The cursed warrior seemed surprised. Had he not expected guards here? Thor didn't waste time with words. As soon as he saw the intruder, he leaped forward, bringing Mjolnir down with a majestic force of thunder. Go to hell! The cursed warrior, caught off guard, could only raise his arms to block the blow. The violent collision sent arcs of lightning bouncing around, crackling in the air. The cursed warrior was struck by the powerful hammer and fell to his knees, but he was not dead. Cursed warriors had strong defenses. They were not so easily defeated. End of this chapter. Chapter 311. Weakness in the Waist One-Punch Fighter. Thor's arms were scorched by the thunder, but his thick armor, though conductive, absorbed much of the impact. He swung his left fist, delivering a powerful punch. The cursed warrior, uninterested in further entanglement with Thor, strode towards the defense device. If he could destroy it, Asgard's defenses would crumble. Arr! Thor leaped into the air, wrapping his arms around the warrior's waist and pulling him back. Despite the warrior's appearance as a melee fighter, Thor couldn't be sure if he had long-range attacks, so he kept his distance. The cursed warrior was furious. He had been thwarted repeatedly and was running out of patience. If this continued, Lord Malekith's grand plan would fail in Asgard, just as it had thousands of years ago. Enraged, he raised his arms and brought them down heavily. Boom, boom. Thor, still the god of thunder and not yet fully awakened, was at a disadvantage without his hammer. After several heavy blows, he fell to the ground, battered but resolute. Fool! The cursed warrior roared, frustrated by Thor's persistence. Unable to kill him quickly, he grabbed a bomb from his waist and hurled it at the defense device. Thor's instincts screamed danger. Not good. He quickly summoned his hammer, knocking the singularity-devouring high-explosive bomb into the air. The bomb exploded, creating a small singularity black hole with a powerful gravitational pull that began to draw everything towards it. The defense device wobbled under the strain. Damn, Thor cursed, releasing the cursed warrior and flying towards his fallen hammer. Unfortunately, he was caught midair by the warrior and subjected to a brutal beating, reminiscent of Loki's earlier fate. If Loki were present, he would have shouted, "Yeah, that's how it feels!" But Thor's armor provided better protection than Loki's. Despite being dazed, Thor managed to summon his hammer and strike back with a thunderous blow, sending the cursed warrior flying. Freed, Thor summoned lightning to neutralize the singularity wormhole. In Thor 3, this bomb seemed formidable, but in reality, it was less so. Loki's reaction to it was more of a sudden realization than fear. He could have avoided the singularity with his illusions, which might have inspired his plan to fake his death. Perhaps he had intended to play dead all along, but Thor's intervention thwarted him. The small black hole created by the bomb was dispersed by Thor's lightning, but it still damaged the base of the defense device, leaving a noticeable crack. Fortunately, the device continued to function smoothly, and the missing piece had little impact. The cursed warrior, seething with rage, advanced once more. Unexpectedly, Thor did not engage, but instead waved at him. "Goodbye. No, never see you again." "Huh?" The cursed warrior paused, confused. "Your weakness is really in the waist," Thor declared. The warrior looked down in horror. The last bomb on his waist had turned red and was lit up. He rushed towards the device, intending to use himself as a bomb to destroy it. But Thor was ready. Thunder and lightning crackled as he prepared to strike. Before he could, the bomb exploded, swallowing the cursed warrior in its blast. Thor transported the cursed warrior into the different space. The latter didn't even manage to take a step. Ahem. Thor rubbed his chest, almost vomiting blood from the cursed warrior's earlier attack. He sat slowly on the steps, heaving a sigh of relief when he saw the device still running. So that's what it means. Before he left, Duke had told him that if he encountered a big guy in armor, his weak point was the waist. At first, Thor didn't quite understand what this meant, and even used thunder and lightning to target the cursed warrior's waist. Of course, he aimed at the side without the bomb. It was a coincidence that he missed the other side. What would have happened if the bomb had been struck by lightning? That remains unknown. He didn't realize what Duke was referring to until the cursed warrior dropped the bomb. At the same time, the cursed warrior was blasted away. Thor activated the bomb. That's why the bomb lit up by itself. Huh. Thor took a long breath, stood up, and walked down the stage. There shouldn't be anyone coming again, right? There were still a lot of troubles waiting for him outside, but he couldn't just sit and wait for rabbits. Before leaving, he called a team of guards to stand watch. The suppression in the prison had been completed, and there was no need to be merciful to these prisoners who dared to riot. They would all be killed. "You guys did a good job." Thor rushed over and found that he was no longer needed. "Are you injured?" Sif stepped forward worriedly. Thor wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said indifferently, "It was a fierce battle, but fortunately it has been resolved. The one who can make you fight hard is not a small person." Vostag laughed. "Vostag, Hogun, you rushed over to guard the defense of Asgard. Just now, there was a sneak attack by the cursed warrior. Although I killed him and arranged a team of guards, I am still worried about danger," Thor said. "Don't worry, leave it to us." "Go." The two strode out. "What about Loki?" The problem within Asgard had been temporarily resolved, and the rest was external. It was time to address another trouble. He should still be there. Sif turned her head to look. Because he had been warned in advance, Loki's cell was cloaked in an illusion. From the outside, it appeared empty, as if no one was inside. Odin had also set up a spell to shield all perception, so Loki inside could not feel what was happening outside. Daily meals were distributed according to normal standards, but the guards were not allowed to talk to Loki. In the past half a month, this had almost driven him crazy. It was like being locked in a small, dark room. Thor walked over slowly, a thunderbolt shattering the illusion of the cell. Loki was finally able to see outside. Bored, he had been lying on the bed, but suddenly turned his head to look and swish, sat up. He looked dumbfounded. What happened? There were corpses on the ground outside, including prisoners and guards. As for the cells, all were broken open. End of this chapter. Chapter 312. Just Stay. "The Dark Elves have invaded," Thor announced before turning on his heel and leaving. The chaos within Asgard had been quelled, but now was not the time to relax. The external threat was even more severe. "Hey, what the hell happened? Let me out! Let me out! Hey!" Loki pounded on the cell walls, but his hands were only burned black by the golden runes. Thor walked to the door of the cell and turned his head to look at Loki. "For the mother, you stay here forever," Thor said before leaving. "Hey, what do you mean? Bastard, come back here. Hey!" Loki yelled, his frustration evident. He had been locked in the little golden house for days, completely cut off from the outside world. He couldn't sense anything beyond his cell. Even the guard who delivered his food every day didn't utter a single word to him. When he finally saw the outside, the entire prison was in chaos, as if the world was ending. But his good brother didn't offer any explanation, only a faint sentence. "For mother, you stay here forever." "Stay with you, Falk. Asgard was under attack, and he wanted to fight, not stay here." Fandral didn't understand why, but Sif had heard some rumors. Duke suggested that. An enraged Loki looked up abruptly, his eyes bloodshot. Duke! It was all because of Duke. Dealing with him again and again. If it weren't for Duke, he wouldn't have failed. Sif was startled by his outburst. "Some of what I've heard is like this. For the specific reason, you'd better ask Thor yourself. But I think the reason why he suggested this should be to prevent you from collaborating with these invading dark elves." "What did you say?" Loki glared angrily. Fandral, not a fool either, pointed his sword at Loki and scolded. "What are you talking about? Are you deaf? She said you would mess with them. I think that Mr. Duke is right. Didn't I press a phantom for you? You should also be released and join them, right?" Loki gritted his teeth and remained silent. Never mind, the possibility was quite high. They were all wrong. It was true that they hooked up together, but Loki only reminded the cursed warrior. The cursed warrior did not release Loki. Maybe. The cursed warrior also noticed that this prisoner was different. To avoid more trouble, it was better to have less trouble. But in their view, the intruder released all the prison cells, and Loki would not be an exception. Letting Loki out and then cooperating with each other was the most likely scenario in their minds. But that's over now. "Clean up the corpses immediately, and the rest of the guards will follow me," Sif shouted, rushing out first, followed by Fandral. Thor rushed to Frigga's bedroom and finally heaved a sigh of relief after finding that his mother was safe and sound. Fortunately, the future had been reversed. According to Duke's words, "I've given you the hope, but if it turns out to be disappointment in the end, then you can't blame others." "Thor, has it been resolved?" Frigga asked. "Yes, Mother. I'm going to deal with the outside affairs first," Thor nodded, turning and walking out. Duke's prophecy he never told his mother, and of course, neither did Odin. There was no need to tell the other party about such unnecessary things to avoid. Unnecessary trouble. How about it? Not long after he came out, he met his father, Odin. "Mother is safe and sound." "I don't mean this. How is it in the prison?" Odin asked, heaving a sigh of relief while pretending to be very calm. "The inside of the cell has been quelled, and I have dealt with the intruders in the defense chamber. In addition, Vostag and Hogun have brought a team to guard the chamber. Father, the rest are the enemies outside," Thor said. "Well, I will personally make Malekith come and go," Odin declared, before turning around and heading out with the gun of eternity. At this time, in the huge cross spaceship hovering above Asgard, Malekith was already waiting impatiently. "Master Malekith, it seems the cursed warrior has failed," one of his Sith, subordinates reported. It had been an hour, but the defenses of Asgard still held strong. The cursed warrior had clearly failed. "Huh." Malekith gritted his teeth, glaring at Asgard, now protected like a golden fortress. "Trash!" He realized that the warrior of the damned had not only failed to breach Asgard's defenses, but had also perished inside. However, retreat was not an option in his mind. "Order all the spaceships to slaughter the civilians of Asgard," Malekith commanded with a sneer. "I don't believe they won't come out. If they want to come out, they will have to lower their defenses, and that will be the perfect time for us to invade. No matter what, we will achieve final victory." "Victory! Victory! Victory!" echoed his subordinates. "Master Malekith, I just don't understand," one of his subordinates hesitated. "Since your sense of the ether has disappeared, why do we need to attack Asgard by force?" I don't think Odin can hide the ether well enough to isolate your senses. The subordinate's confusion was understandable. The ether particles had indeed vanished from Malekith's perception. The last known location was Asgard. Although the ether particles had briefly appeared on Earth before entering Karazhan, Malekith had not detected their departure. If we can't find any trace of the ether particles, then we will force Asgard to reveal them, Malekith declared. Moreover, no matter what, we will eventually defeat Asgard. Only by completely conquering the people of God's domain can my Dark Hour plan proceed without interference. Sooner or later, we will attack Asgard. This was exactly what Duke had said. No matter where Thor hid Jane Foster, the outcome would not change. The Dark Elves would come to kill, and they would come to kill regardless of the location. The only difference now was that Frigga no longer had to protect Jane Foster. Just as Malekith was swearing that he would win in the end, a flash of light suddenly illuminated the sky, and a giant swooped down. Boom! Before anyone could react, a massive golden spear descended from the heavens, striking with immense force. There was no time to retreat into parallel space, and the cross-shaped spacecraft was impaled. Boom! A burst of flames erupted into the sky. Who? Malekith shouted in shock. As the smoke cleared, he saw that the attacker was none other than Odin, the king of the gods, riding his steed Sleipnir. Impossible. Asgard's defenses have not been lowered. How did they come out? Malekith was horrified. Click, click, click. Thunderous booms followed as enormous lightning-like bolts struck the spaceships one by one. End of this chapter. Chapter 313. The times have changed. Malekith, why? Malekith turned pale with shock. Why had it come to this? Why could people fall from the sky when the shield was clearly not open? Why? It shouldn't be like this. No, this shouldn't be the fate of the Dark Elves. Boom! A huge golden spear fell from the sky again. Times have changed, Malekith, Odin shouted, riding Sleipnir. He circled the massive ship at high speed, piercing it repeatedly with enormous golden spears. Asgard will win, Thor yelled. Click. The god of thunder raised his hammer high, and countless thunderbolts as thick as tree trunks fell from the sky, striking precisely where the golden spears had pierced. In an instant, the massive ship was engulfed in black smoke, both inside and out. Ah! Malekith screamed, unable to dodge. He leaped up, still crackling with residual electricity. Evacuate quickly! Evacuate quickly! He shouted anxiously. The advantage was gone. If they didn't leave now, it would be over. He had hoped to seize the opportunity and defeat Asgard in one swift strike. Although unlikely, it should have been possible to deal a significant blow. If they could capture Frigga, they could potentially use her to bargain for the ether particles. But now, everything was falling apart. My lord, it's not good. Our secondary engine was destroyed by Odin's spear. We can't retreat into the secondary space. What bastard! Malekith was furious and kicked his subordinate away. Damn, he had been careless. Thousands of years ago, Odin had fought against them and naturally knew where their spaceship's engine was. Ruthlessly, Odin had destroyed their engine as soon as they arrived, and now there was no way to run. At that moment, a portal suddenly appeared at the top of the main control room. Malekith felt a chill in his soul. As he looked up, he saw Odin riding a warhorse, descending from the sky in a golden light. Boom! Sleipnir's horseshoe landed heavily on Malekith's chest, and his sternum caved in instantly. Odin's mount was also a mythical beast. The immense force pinned Malekith to the ground. Odin waved the eternal spear in his hand, striking 18 times in rapid succession. Chug, chug, chug. Golden flashes filled the room. All the dark elves in the main control room were pierced through. A golden light erupted from their bodies, causing all the controllers to explode. Only then did Odin take the time to shoot Malekith through the shoulder. Old man, it's over. At that moment, a vision flashed through Malekith's mind. Drink, Hellscream. This is the fate of the orcs, and you shall all be kings. But Gul'dan at what cost? All of these, how dare you refuse this gift? Did you bring these awful here to your funeral? Quick, this is not the fate of the orcs. Times have changed. Orcs will never be slaves, and we shall be kings. Shaking his head to clear the vision, Malekith endured the severe pain in his shoulder and asked, "You, why?" As I said earlier, times have changed, Malekith. You lose because you lack information. Do you think this is thousands of years ago? You can't keep up with the times, Malekith. I will tell you, the ether is on Earth. However, even if you go to Earth, you will still face the same situation because there are at least 4 beings not weaker than me. Duke, Wonder Woman, Gu Yi, Da Chao, 4 beings of the same level. And Duke is almost a bug. What? Malekith's eyes widened. In his time, the most formidable fighters were Odin's father Bor and a few Asgardians. He never imagined that after waking up, the world would have changed so drastically, but Asgard remained the same, and his spaceship had no power against it. No way, the spaceship of the... Malekith lay on the ground, frustrated and defeated. The Dark Elf's restoration plan had ended before it even began. He was pinned to the ground, unable to move, with a spear through his chest and the hooves of a hoe, Resi pressing down on him. I want to know, how did you get out of the shield? Don't tell me you left a retreat, Malekith demanded. Of course, there is an exit, Odin replied, but as I mentioned earlier, there is someone of my level aiding Asgard. Heh! Don't complain if you lose, Malekith smiled wryly. No complaints at all. 2 Odins beat us. Today I am destined to be unable to escape, but the Dark Elves will rise again one day, Malekith cursed. Although the secondary engine of the large ship was defeated, the rest of the spaceships that flew out were still intact and could escape completely. As long as they hide, there will be a day when they will reproduce, although this time may be very, very long. No. Odin shook his head. Malekith, starting today, there will be no more Dark Elves in this world. All of Asgard has been blocked. Your men, there is no escape. Malekith was stunned, then laughed loudly. Ha! This is not your doing. If I am not wrong, it is also the one who made the move, right? What? May I know his name? Odin hesitated for a moment, but then shook his head. Sorry, I didn't get his consent. Even though Duke wasn't afraid of being retaliated against afterward, he preferred to keep Malekith in the dark. Then, that's it. Malekith closed his eyes slowly, then opened them suddenly, his eyes flashing with intense red light. Explode! Suddenly, Odin felt danger coming from all directions. He hastily soared into the air, pierced through the huge ship, and rushed out with Splinir. The moment he left the ship, it exploded violently, sending shockwaves in all directions like a level 13 hurricane. The lower buildings were overwhelmed, crushed, and reduced to powder. The spaceships around were also instantly bombed in all directions, causing a series of explosions. Odin, who was fleeing, couldn't avoid the impact. He was hit hard in the back by the massive wave, spitting out a mouthful of blood, and crashed heavily to the ground. Father, Thor in the distance, was terrified. He flew over to catch his father, but it was too late. His father's favorite horse had fallen and hit the ground, its fate uncertain. End of this chapter. Chapter 314, Visiting Asgard. Father, are you okay? Thor exclaimed, placing Odin gently on the ground. Seeing his father bleeding from the corner of his mouth, Thor felt a pang of discomfort in his chest. Was this still the powerful king of the gods? How had he become so weak? Ahem, help me up. I can still fight, Odin said, his voice strained. Father, you'd better take a break and leave the rest to me, Thor insisted. Shut up and help me up, Odin demanded stubbornly. Thor had no choice but to help his father to his feet. I'm fine. Go ahead. Don't let our guests see us falter, Odin said, trying to maintain his dignity. Don't worry, father, Thor replied, soaring into the air. The guest Odin referred to was Duke, who had come to Asgard. Asgard's defense had an exit, but opening it would weaken the overall shield. They had used Duke's portal to surprise Malekith. Odin didn't know the exact location of the engine on the massive ship, but Duke had provided several key positions to target. Odin walked slowly towards his horse, Splinir, who was already bleeding from his 7 orifices. Despite being a divine beast, Splinir was still just a horse. The violent explosion had taken its toll, even with Odin's protection. Seeing his master approach, Splinir weakly raised his head, whimpered, and then hung his head forever. Perhaps it just wanted to see that its master was safe. It got what it wanted, but it fell nonetheless. Odin trembled slightly. This was his old companion, and it had walked ahead of him after all. Slowly, he stretched out his hand and closed Splinir's eyes. Sleep, old friend. I might follow your footsteps soon, Odin whispered, coughing up another mouthful of blood. He had tried to push Thor away, not wanting his son to see him in such a weakened state. As a father, no matter how weak he was, he had to stand tall in front of his son. Odin had already reached the end of his lifespan, and his vitality was fading. The battle with Malekith had drained much of his divine power, and the explosion of the massive ship had inflicted serious injuries. If it weren't for his concern about morale, he would have collapsed long ago. Now, he was holding on for 3 reasons: to set an example for his people, to avoid losing face in front of Duke, and because he was still somewhat wary of Duke. The Dark Elves were dumbfounded. The massive ship had exploded. What had just happened? They had been at an absolute advantage, and now everything had turned upside down. Could anyone explain what had happened in the last 5 minutes? The ship was blown to pieces, and their leader was likely dead. How could they continue the fight? They decided to flee. One by one, they escaped into the dimension space. However, as they tried to escape, they collided with something and exploded. The remaining Dark Elves were at a loss. What should they do? It seemed there was an invisible shield around Asgard, making escape impossible. The remaining Dark Elves were in despair. As they wandered around, trying to find a gap, a spaceship noticed a person floating outside. This person was strange, flying alongside them and looking at them. "What the?" one of the Dark Elves exclaimed. "Can this person see us?" Another asked in disbelief. "Well, it seems so," another replied, their mind breaking under the strain. The Dark Elves in the spaceship were all in a state of shock. Could this person stop torturing them like this? Nima, still talking to herself. They were all on the verge of a breakdown. The person was Duke. "Strange, it doesn't seem to be escaping into parallel space," Duke mused, observing the Dark Elves. Duke stretched out his hand to touch it and could feel the hull of the spaceship, but something felt a little strange. He couldn't see it directly, but he could replace his sight with magic vision and perceive the existence of the spaceship through the subtle flow of magic power. When he touched it with his hand, he found it curious. He could feel it, but couldn't touch the entity. How to describe it? It was like penetrating through the past, but this one was cold on one side and hot on the other. This icy area was the small spaceship. "It doesn't look like the light reflection of the helicarrier," Duke mused. "Although light reflection can make something transparent and disappear, the entity still exists. If you bomb the sky with cannonballs, you can still hit the opponent. But this one, you can feel its presence but can't touch the entity. It feels like it's only halfway into a sub-parallel space." I don't understand, Duke shook his head. He directly fixed the surrounding space and forcibly pulled the small spaceship out. With a boom, it smashed to the ground. The small spaceship didn't break down. Duke wanted to study it, so he kept it intact. "Tell me, what is the principle of your little spaceship? Explain it to me, and I might spare your lives," Duke demanded. There were about a dozen Dark Elves on board, looking at each other nervously. Finally, they isolated the captain. After all, the god in front of them was so powerful that they didn't even dare to think of fighting. Pulling them out of the secondary space directly was beyond their comprehension. The captain was very depressed and said tremblingly, We don't know. We can only drive it, but we don't know the principle." "You didn't lie to me?" Duke's expression turned cold. "No, absolutely not." The captain quickly shook his head. "Who knows then?" Duke asked. The captain turned his head and glanced at the huge ship that had been blown into countless pieces in the water in the distance. Master Malekith, and a few bosses know." Duke felt a wave of frustration. It meant no one here knew. It was impossible for anyone to have survived the big explosion just now. "That means you are useless?" Duke's voice was icy. Don't kill us. We surrender. The Dark Elves were terrified and quickly knelt down, kowtowing. Unfortunately for them, Duke never kept prisoners, especially alien captives with no research value. He breathed deeply, and the bitter cold wind froze them into ice sculptures, which then shattered into pieces. Crack. Thor struck a thunderbolt and descended. "Why? Demonstrating to me, right? Do you know that I was almost deafened?" Duke turned his head, his expression unfriendly. Thor was speechless. "Sorry, can you find them all?" Chapter 3 and 15. I'm actually allowed to participate in this kind of occasion? Duke ignored him and stepped onto the spaceship on the ground. He asked curiously, "What is the principle behind what you are talking about? You can escape into a parallel space, but you only escaped halfway. Half of you are still outside, which is really strange." Thor. Above the sky, another burst of flames erupted, and another dark elf fell. Duke clicked his tongue. If he guessed right, the dark elf must have been frightened by seeing him forcibly dragged out of the small spaceship and fled in a panic. As a result, it naturally hit the shielding shield, leading to an explosion. On the other side, another dark elf met the same fate. They seemed to realize they couldn't escape. One by one, they took the initiative to show up, landed hurriedly, jumped off the spaceship, and surrendered with their hands on their heads. Some of the slower ones were bombarded by the Asgard guards as soon as they revealed themselves. "Look, they've become smarter." Duke pointed to the distance and laughed. The Dark Elves learned to behave. Instead of running directly in midair, they fell to the ground first, then ran out and knelt down, begging for mercy. After all, they couldn't run or hide. They would be caught in the end. With their boss gone, they simply surrendered. Thor was also speechless. He hadn't had a good fight yet, but it was over. "I'll deal with the follow-up first. See you later." "See you. Remember to leave me 2 small spaceships. I want to study them carefully," Duke shouted. "Understood." Looking at the Dark Elves kneeling on the ground, Thor's eyes were full of murderous intent. The prison happened to be empty. Grab a batch and put them to work in the mines. You can't raise them for nothing." Duke was very curious about the technology behind the Dark Elves' spaceships. It was different from the mirror space, and also different from parallel space. The mirror space allowed people inside to see everything outside, but those outside couldn't perceive the existence inside. If the mirror space wasn't broken, it was impossible for people outside to harm those inside. But in essence, they were still in the same world. As for the parallel space, it was another world based on the main world. The two did not communicate and were invisible to each other. The Dark Elves' technology seemed a bit like entering the mirror space, but it wasn't exactly the same. In the movie, it appeared as if they had become transparent, like colorless, transparent resin, shuttling back and forth between Asgard castles. But that was just for visual effect. Otherwise, how would the audience know they were hidden? Could it be based on sound? In reality, these transparent, invisible things couldn't be seen at all, and even the sound couldn't be heard. Heimdall relied entirely on his own ability and sensed something was wrong purely by feeling, and it was just cannon fodder thrown out to attract attention. Once these small spaceships completely escaped, he couldn't see them at all. As he had told Thor after the battle, he knew the Dark Elves were around, but he couldn't see them. So, it's not like they're reflections of light, disappearing. If that were the case, there's no way Heimdall couldn't see it. Interesting. A beautiful figure descended gracefully. "How are you doing? Are you having fun?" she asked. "It's not fun at all. I thought the Dark Elves were formidable, but they turned out to be a bunch of amateurs," Diana said, curling her lips. Duke was embarrassed. "Okay, it's time to take a stroll here as tourists. We'll go home after we're done." "It's over. What else is there to do?" Diana was curious. "Although the battle is over, how can there be no dessert afterwards?" Duke showed a dangerous smile. Diana shook her head, her expression suggesting she was plotting something. The battle was indeed over. In the Dark Elf Invasion War and the Asgard Defense War, Asgard suffered a total of 133 deaths among the Gar, 436 civilian casualties, and the loss of 33 airships. Fortunately, no buildings were damaged. As for the Dark Elves, it was impossible to count how many had perished. More than 90% of the Dark Elves were on that massive ship, and the number of survivors from the explosion was only in the double digits. Including those who surrendered, there were 666 prisoners in total. Although the cell was large, it couldn't accommodate so many prisoners. They were divided into 3 groups, one for mining, one for farming, and one for repairs. Eternal slavery. One could only wonder if, in a few hundred years, they would rise up shouting, "Dark Elves will never be slaves." With the battle over, a celebration banquet was naturally in order. Duke and his party were honored guests. In addition to Diana, 3 of his apprentices, Samir, Leon, and Jennifer also came to see the world. Although the three of them were considered unique and powerful figures on Earth, they had never ventured beyond it. This visit was their chance to see the universe. They were particularly impressed that the characters from myth actually existed. As for the technology of the Asgardians, it didn't seem all that advanced. Earth's missiles could still cause damage here. Asgard's airships were merely taking advantage of superior materials and slightly better manufacturing techniques. "Come, drink," the bearded Vostag, a large man with a love for wine, called out at the banquet. He couldn't do anything without a drink in hand. "If you drink any more, you'll be drunk," Fandral laughed. "Are you kidding me? I can still drink another barrel," Vostag retorted angrily, his eyes bulging. "You can question whether I'm as good as Hogan, but you can't question my drinking capacity." Hogan smiled. "Hey, I didn't force you. You admitted it yourself." Vostag was stunned for a moment, then stood up abruptly. "I admit nothing. If you don't believe me, let's fight." "Sit down," Thor commanded, glaring at him. Vostag sat back down sullenly. Sif, who was sitting next to him, smiled awkwardly. "I'm sorry I made you laugh. That's just how they are." Sif was there to accompany the drinkers. There were quite a few people responsible for their appearance, but it was impossible to arrange for an ordinary maid on such a solemn occasion. Sif had volunteered. Duke didn't care much for the drinking culture. "I think he's pretty sweet," he said. "Yes, you have good taste," Vostag laughed, only to be glared at by Thor again. Samir, Leon, and Jennifer found the experience very novel, like participating in a medieval court banquet. Asgard had an ancient costume style that was both advanced and backward, but it was certainly refreshing. Just then, an unharmonious voice broke the atmosphere. "It's so strange that I'm allowed to participate in this kind of occasion." End of this chapter. Chapter 316. You should take the stairs on the left. "It's so strange that I'm allowed to participate in this kind of occasion." A sarcastic voice, coupled with the screeching sound of shackles dragging on the floor, drew the attention of everyone at the banquet. Loki. The bearded Vostag was the most irritable. Upon seeing Loki, he immediately stood up, pointed, and cursed. "Bastard, why are you here? Which fool brought him?" The two guards who had escorted Loki in quickly staggered and disappeared. "I made him come." Odin's voice cut through the tension. Everyone fell silent. Vostag stammered, realizing his mistake. He slapped himself hard on the mouth. "I didn't say that just now. I didn't say anything. I'll just have a drink." Fandral quickly pulled him down. "Your big mouth will get you killed one day." Vostag didn't dare to argue anymore. He drank mouthful after mouthful, quickly getting himself drunk. After finishing a large pot of wine, he slumped back in his seat. I'm drunk. Hiccup." The crowd was stunned. Duke chuckled. "Talent no less than Baoqiang." "Sit down, Loki. That's your seat," Odin said, pointing to an empty chair next to Thor. Everyone realized it had been reserved for Loki. Despite his mistakes, he was still Odin's son and deserved a place at the table. "Thank you, Father, for remembering me," Loki said with a smile. He walked slowly to the table and sat down. The shackles and handcuffs remained, but they didn't seem to bother him. After tearing a mouthful of mutton and drinking a glass of plum wine, Loki looked directly at Duke. "My half-moon's darkness is thanks to you." "Loki." Thor raised his hand to calm his younger brother, unsure of why their father had called him. "You should thank me. I saved you," Duke said calmly. "Oh? I should thank you? I don't know. Where did you feel that you saved me?" Loki sneered. "I heard that you can see the future. You saw something from the future, didn't you? Let me see what you saw. Can you really see the future, or are you just lying?" Sif was angry. "Do you think everyone is the god of lies?" Duke is the benefactor of Asgard. Without him and his apprentices, many more would have died, and the Dark Elves might still be a threat. Duke ignored Loki's cynicism and continued eating his veal. "You want to know?" "I really want to," Loki nodded politely. Duke slowly put down his knife and fork and turned to look at Odin. The latter showed no expression, but Frigga looked nervous. Mothers are always worried about their sons. "Since you want to see it, I can let you. It just so happens that everyone here also wants to know why you were locked in the little black room." Duke smiled and clasped his hands. A ghostly white halo appeared in midair. "Before watching, I want to tell you, This is what happened in the original timeline, but it has been changed now. Therefore, what you see now may not necessarily happen in the future. Loki sneered, catching a loophole. Since you can see the future, why not show everyone a changed future? Duke glanced at him. Little friend, do you have a lot of questions? What? Loki frowned, a question mark practically visible above his head. You think it's easy to peek into the future? Do you want to see the changed one? Yes, I'll let you know when I'm ready. As he spoke, Duke raised his hand, and the future began to unfold. Seeing the shadow of a person appearing in the halo, everyone's eyes widened. This ability was astonishing, like watching a movie on Earth. Thor's eyes widened the most, knowing what was to come. The future seems uncertain, and Duke doesn't know everything. This is a fragment saved and recorded based on the original timeline I glimpsed, he said before quietly resuming his meal of veal. The banquet hall, however, was far from quiet. His 3 disciples and Diana were visibly disturbed by the horrifying scene they had just witnessed. In the screen, the cursed warrior defeated the cells one by one. But when he reached Loki's cell, he hesitated. Tilting his head and staring at Loki, perhaps he sensed something was amiss. Loki's cell was different, more luxurious, with seats and other amenities. Instinctively feeling something was wrong, the cursed warrior chose not to release Loki and turned to leave. At that moment, Loki spoke. I think you should take the stairs on the left. During the banquet, Loki frowned suddenly. The cursed warrior glanced back and turned to the left. To him, Loki was still a prisoner. Although he didn't understand why Loki was treated differently, he was still a prisoner nonetheless. Thor, Sif, Odin, and Frigga also frowned, knowing where the stairs on the left led. The cursed warrior continued, killing the guards in front of the secret room and breaching Asgard's defenses. This gave the Dark Elves an opportunity, and their spaceship crashed directly into Asgard. Sif suddenly realized the truth. She had blocked her perception and added an illusion to make Loki unable to see what was happening outside, causing the cursed warrior to mistakenly think the cell was empty. As the scene shifted to Frigga's bedroom, Thor's heart tightened. After a fierce battle, Frigga was captured by the cursed warrior. Malekith, discovering that Jane Foster was a decoy, ordered the cursed warrior to kill Frigga in a fit of rage. No, Thor's heart bled, even though it was in the past. He finally understood why Duke had said the ether would lead to his mother's death in Asgard. In a fit of rage, he killed the cursed warrior, avenging his mother. Loki's frown deepened, his eyebrows knitting together. Despite everything, he still loved his mother dearly. Enough! Stop it! Frigga stood up abruptly. Whether it's true or not, I thank you. That's enough. Put it away. Are you sure? Duke glanced at Frigga, then stared at Thor playfully. You decide whether to continue or not, but I must tell you, there will be a more serious crisis in the future. Although the trajectory has changed, I'm not sure they won't happen. Do you want to figure it out first, or stop here? Thor was caught in a dilemma. He didn't want to make his mother uncomfortable, but he also wanted to protect Asgard. After much hesitation, he looked at his mother. Mother. Frigga sat down with a sullen face, signaling her compromise. After all, she was the queen of Asgard and wanted to protect her people. End of this chapter. Chapter 317. Really my sister. As the queen of Asgard, she loves her son dearly, but her love for the people of Asgard is even greater. Although she wasn't entirely sure if this was truly the future, she had a strong sense that it might be. Raised by a witch, she had learned to look beyond the surface, and she could tell at a glance that the fat Thor before her was from the future. Despite knowing that the video would completely expose Loki's actions, Sif was a little surprised. She had always thought that the cursed warrior would release Loki, which was why she had shielded the cell. She never expected things to unfold this way. The possibilities seemed endless. Duke waved his hand, and the images continued. They were all fragmented movies, not connected in sequence. Malekith fled, and Thor applied to his father to take Jane Foster to find Malekith. However, his application was rejected, and all passages were blocked. Thor then colluded with Heimdall and successfully brought Loki out because Loki knew how to leave Asgard. Odin temporarily closed the Rainbow Bridge, and Heimdall was no longer on duty, attending a banquet instead. Seeing this scene, my head hurt immediately, and my boss even cast a vague glance at me. After some fighting, Thor realized he had underestimated the ether particle. Although he joined forces with his brother to kill the cursed warrior, Loki tragically died at the hands of the cursed warrior. To stop Malekith, Thor took Jane Foster back to Earth. Thor's heart trembled when he saw this, but then he remembered that Duke had said his brother was not dead. Loki, however, was confused. Was he dead? He didn't know the truth and thought he was really dead. After all, no one knew what they would look like after death. The screen cut back to Svartalfheim, the homeland of the Dark Elves. The corpse on the ground disappeared in a blink of an eye, and Loki walked out from another direction. He changed into the costume of an Asgardian guard, walked to the Asgard airship in the distance, and rushed back to his homeland. "You actually threw my body outside," Loki questioned his elder brother happily, knowing he was not dead. "You are not dead," Thor replied indifferently, guessing what was going to happen next. "But you didn't know it at that time." "I lied to you again." "Ah, what a sincere tear," Loki smiled. Loki returned to Asgard, took advantage of Odin's moment of inattention, locked his abilities, and threw him to Earth in a nursing home. Then he transformed into Odin and sat on the throne. The entire banquet hall was dumbfounded. Does it really seem like something I would do?" Loki laughed at himself. Thor grabbed Loki's neck violently. Duke interjected, "There are worse things." Thor came back, knelt before Odin, and went to find news about the original stone. After he left, Odin reverted to Loki's form. Bang! An old punch hit Loki's face heavily, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. After all, he had been tricked into shouting, "Father King." "It hurts," Duke pursed his lips. "Oh, it's really a kind greeting from my brother." Loki spat out a mouthful of blood, not looking at Thor at all. After Thor left Asgard, Loki became king. Not only did he find a reason to lock Heimdall up, but he also had more fun, erecting a huge statue of himself and staging a play. At this time, Thor returned and exposed Loki's tricks in public, causing an uproar among the crowd. "This stage play is very interesting. I seem to remember those two actors," Loki smiled. "Do you still want to say that the statue is very imposing?" Thor said angrily. "Don't tell me. Humph." And then Thor took Loki to Earth. Thor saw this scene, 177A Bleecker Street. He finally met Dr. Strange, but dialed? "What do you mean?" Thor asked, turning. Duke shook his head. "Sorry, this person hasn't appeared yet. He's just an ordinary person. For his safety, I think it's better not to show his appearance," Duke said, looking at Loki. After all, Loki raised his shackled hands and smiled. "I'm already like this, and you're still worried? You still have to be cautious. After all, your fate is quite miserable." Loki fell silent. Thor had finished talking with Dr. Strange and drew a circle of light to release Loki. With a heavy thud, Loki hit the ground. "I'm down for 3 more minutes now," he groaned. Everyone exchanged bewildered glances. Loki's situation looked truly pitiful. After arriving in Norway, they met the long-lost god-king Odin. Shortly after speaking, Odin died. A powerful woman emerged from the black mist, stepped out, and crushed Thor's hammer. She then threw the two out of the Rainbow Bridge and killed Fandral and Vostag upon her return. Hogun led his army to resist, but the result was equally disastrous. Vostag turned over and shouted, "Asshole! It's all your fault." Everyone else was taken aback. "Aren't you drunk? Are you faking your feelings?" they wondered. Although Fandral was also very angry, he still dragged Vostag down. Things were becoming very troublesome. The scene shifted to Thor being captured in an arena where he met Hulk. "Bruce?" Thor was shocked. "How could he be here? This is obviously an alien planet." Duke waved his hand dismissively. "This is not important." Thor was left speechless. In Asgard's final battle, Hela faced off against Surtur. Of course, she lost to Surtur. Not only was she blasted by a sword, but the entire realm of Asgard was also destroyed by it. Duke leisurely drank plum wine while Diana and the 3 young apprentices were all dumbfounded. The legendary gods, just like that, finished? They didn't have any real feelings yet, but the Asgardians in the banquet hall were different. They all stood up in shock. It was unbelievable. This was the future? The future of Asgard? Although Asgard had long circulated a prophecy, Ragnarok, almost no one believed it. Even those who did believe didn't take it seriously. The gods of Ragnarok, if they existed, were thought to be far, far away. This included some of those present, but they never expected the twilight of the gods was so imminent. Loki was no longer at ease, completely dumbfounded. Asgard destroyed, and possibly because of his indirect actions? Father, that Hela, is she really my sister? He asked, his voice trembling. End of this chapter. Chapter 318. More Serious Matters. Odin's face was grim. He never expected the secret kept hidden in his heart to be revealed. He frowned and slammed the table hard. All right, everyone leave, he commanded. Although he didn't specify who, everyone understood. Except for Duke and his party, as well as Thor and Loki, everyone got up and left. Even Frigga, unable to bear the pain, turned and left. Duke had plans for the future. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let them see this. As for whether they believed it or not, that was not his concern. After a long silence, Odin spoke slowly. Hela, the goddess of death, my eldest daughter, your elder sister. What? Although Thor and Loki had some inkling that this might be true, they were still extremely shocked by their father's acknowledgement. Her violent desires grew beyond my control. I couldn't stop her, so I imprisoned her and locked her away. She draws power from Asgard, and here her power will be limitless. So, there really is such a person? Thor still couldn't believe it. I always thought it was just a story, Loki added, equally shocked. After all, it was Hela who directly caused the destruction of Asgard. Although he was a frost giant, he didn't like the frost giants and had killed them with his own hands. If it wasn't for the destruction of Asgard, he sought recognition, his father's recognition of him. That's why he wanted to achieve great things and show his father that he was also capable. But unfortunately, he had always lived in the shadow of his very powerful brother. Loki wanted to be the king of Asgard, not the king of the frost giants. He wanted to rule the land, not destroy it. So after seeing this sister appear and destroy Asgard, he was very angry. Additionally, Twilight of the Gods did not refer to the destruction of Asgard by Surtur, but the arrival of Thanos. It was Thanos who ended Asgard, destroyed most of the gods, and killed half of the Asgardians. This was the real Twilight of the Gods. A story. Yes, it's a long story. I used my life as the price to seal her in the place of death, that is, hell. Once I die, she will be released, Odin explained. He then turned his head to look at Duke. I don't have much time left. I may die any time. Father, Thor said anxiously. Odin waved his hand and continued. Since you have seen the future, then, as a merciful person, you will definitely not allow it to happen? Duke shook his head. You want me to take action at a critical moment? It's possible, but that's your responsibility, right? Young eagles kept in the nest can't soar into the sky. He had always adhered to the principle that whoever does the work bears the responsibility. At most, he could play some guiding and auxiliary roles. I know, Odin began, but Duke interrupted by waving his hand. The destruction of Asgard is not the worst. There will be more serious matters to come, Duke declared. Odin frowned deeply. Thor was also dumbfounded. What? Isn't it serious enough that Asgard is destroyed? Then what could be more serious? Duke smiled. Let me ask you a question. Ask, Thor replied. What is Asgard? Duke inquired. Thor was stunned. What is Asgard? This is Asgard, and this land is called Asgard. No. Duke shook his head. They are Asgardians. As long as you are with the people of Asgard, you will be Asgard wherever you go. Was this too esoteric? Thor frowned, but he somehow understood. Odin nodded slightly. After finishing, Duke waved his hand again, and the image continued to play. What happens next? Brace yourselves. Asgard was destroyed, and Thor took a group of Asgardians who escaped and prepared to go to Earth in a spaceship. But unfortunately, they were attacked by a massive spaceship that was more than 10 times larger. Several rounds of cosmic bombardment severely damaged their spacecraft. Immediately afterwards, the protagonist appeared on the stage, an arrogant purple figure. Sweet Potato easily knocked Hulk down with a few punches. This scene ked Thor and Loki even more. Thor had fought Hulk for a few rounds before, and he was beaten badly. Not to mention Loki, who just yelled and was thrown aside, unable to get up. They were all aware of Hulk's strength. The huge Fenrir was blown away by his punch. But facing this purple-skinned giant, who was about the same size, they had almost no strength to fight back. Purple Sweet Potato's 4 subordinates were also powerful. The 4 of them easily defeated Thor and Loki, slaughtering the entire ship of Asgardians. Duke didn't release any of the captives, leading them to believe that all the Asgardians were killed. Thor's eyes turned red with rage. No! Hulk was sent away by Heimdall with his last strength, and Heimdall himself died honorably. Purple Sweet Potato wanted to kill Thor, but Loki offered the cosmic cube in exchange. Loki attempted to attack Purple Sweet Potato but was killed, his neck crushed by the giant. Thor didn't show any emotion, thinking that his brother was playing tricks again. Duke coughed a few times. There is no illusion, no deception. This time, he is really dead. Thor's mind reeled. Loki also had an unnatural expression, having heard the news of his death. Then Purple Sweet Potato left and blew up the spaceship with the power gem. Under the intense purple flames, the spaceship exploded with a boom. Goosebumps instantly rose on the back of Thor's neck. Was he dead too? So far, the video ended. It's gone? What's next? Is this the end? Thor stood up abruptly. They're all dead. What else can they do if it doesn't end? Duke shrugged. Do you want revenge from ghosts? Thor sat down dejectedly. Was it really over? This is God's fall, Diana sighed, as if watching a tragic movie. Her own people had been destroyed. She thought that the Asgardians who left Earth would be fine, but never imagined that after thousands of years, they would still end up as a handful of dust. Actually, you are still alive, not dead, Duke said, looking at Thor with a grin. It is said that you can survive in the universe, so you are not dead, but you are seriously injured. Although you were rescued by the Guardians of the Galaxy, so what? It's over. Guardians of the Galaxy, is that Rocket Raccoon you mentioned? Thor asked. Correct. Father, do you know who that man is? Thor asked Odin. The destroyer and conqueror of the universe, Thanos, born on Titan. He is very powerful. Even in my prime, it would not be easy to kill him, Odin replied, his voice filled with despair. He hadn't expected such a powerful villain to appear and destroy Asgard. His chest tightened, and a buzzing sound filled his brain as he collapsed. Father, Thor cried out. End of this chapter. Chapter 3:19. What about me? Odin fainted. Is this really happening? Could it be that Odin is dying and Big Sister is coming out early? Although she isn't particularly good-looking, her figure isn't bad. Cough, cough. What am I thinking? What if she comes out and gets thrown directly into Karazhan's cage? She could still be imprisoned. Ahem! Father! Thor cried out in terror, rushing forward. Frigg also ran up from the backstage. Loki tried to stand up, but collapsed back into his seat halfway. Diana frowned and nudged Duke slightly. Hey, you've scared him into a problem. Don't talk nonsense, Duke replied, eating a piece of veal and glaring at her. How can a god who has lived for 5,000 years have such poor mental resilience? The direct cause of his fainting is the injury he suffered from the previous explosion, plus his lifespan is coming to an end. After speaking, he put down his knife and fork and walked over to Odin. 100 flowers bloom. Green leaves sprouted around Odin's body, and red buds formed on the leaves. The buds eventually bloomed, and a warm light nourished Odin's body. Green vitality gradually spread. After about 5 or 6 minutes, Odin slowly opened his eyes. How long has it been? Am I still here? In the past, every time Odin entered the coffin to sleep, he had to sleep for at least a year. And every time he woke up, he felt weak. Sleeping couldn't extend his lifespan, it only delayed his death. But today, after waking up, he found that he was actually full of energy. This wasn't a flashback, there was indeed a trace of strength in his body. It was Mr. Duke who rescued you, Frigg said. Odin was about to thank him, but Thor knelt down first. Thank you for saving my father. Duke smiled playfully. Thor was still the same Thor, with a strong temper. He didn't want to see the father of the gods he admired thank someone else, so he knelt down first. Interesting. Very interesting. All right, it seems you all need some time to digest this news. I will be temporarily visiting Asgard, Duke said, leaving with Diana and his 3 apprentices. Wait a minute, Thor called out. You want to ask about Thanos? Yes. Afterwards, he went through a series of actions. Although he crushed the heroes of Earth with an absolute advantage, he still died in the end, and he died under your axe. But, so what? You were already alone. Duke paused, and as he walked to the door, he added, Oh, by the way, you're not completely alone. The purple sweet potato essence only killed half of you. Then, he left. Purple sweet potato essence? Thor looked at his hammer and frowned. An axe? What does he mean by dying under his axe? Oh, right, the hammer was crushed by Main Street. The axe must be his new weapon, right? I'll help you go down to rest, Frigg said. I'm not old yet, but I really need to take a break, Odin replied, standing up slowly. Rest meant thinking about the future of Asgard. This matter is not allowed to spread. You should worry about your body first, Frigg scolded. Thor remained in the banquet hall, glaring angrily at his stinky brother in front of him. He wanted to chop him with an axe, but ended up calling the guards to throw Loki back into his cell. As he was being taken away, Loki sneered, "Don't you think there's something wrong with this? It seems like everything hurts," but he threw himself out, as if he was just sitting in the distance watching all this happen. Especially in the end, who crushed all the heroes of Earth? What about him? Did he also lose, or are there other problems? Heh. Loki was taken away, planting seeds of suspicion. Thor still had doubts, even though he knew his brother was a stinky brother. Indeed, Thor slowly sat on a chair, propping his chin with his hands. What Loki said wasn't unreasonable. The previous events were fine. They didn't happen on Earth, and Duke had no reason to rescue the Asgardians. But the follow-up, it is not necessarily the case, especially regarding the Earth War. Although Duke did not sep how this future, Duke is undoubtedly very strong. If even he lost to Thanos, then how strong is Thanos? Judging from his father's words, his father in his prime could still defeat Thanos, but it was not easy. Based on his feelings, Duke is by no means weaker than his father. Therefore, with Duke's strength, it should be much easier for him to defeat Thanos than it was for his father. Duke has prevented several disasters on Earth. If Thanos threatens Earth, Duke would not sit idly by. It makes no sense otherwise. Also, the future should be infinitely variable. According to Duke's future, Frigga was supposed to be dead but was saved, so he is confident that he can stop Thanos. He is not panicking. What made him most skeptical was that this timeline should start after Frigga's death, but now that Frigga is not dead, it means that this timeline has been changed. Indeed, it is not easy to peek into the future. It may require a series of complicated preparations. Duke may not have seen the future after the timeline changed. After all, the future of his mother, Frigga, has only just changed. Duke is in Asgard again, and he has no time, let alone the preparation, to peer into the future. But he always felt that something didn't make sense. It may still be because of the doubts surrounding the Earth War, unless Thanos got some powerful equipment and really defeated Duke. That's why Duke wants to change the future of Asgard and join forces with Asgard to prevent Thanos' destruction. However, the feeling Duke gave him was not like that. Duke seemed to be traveling, not in a hurry. In addition, he does not believe that Thanos can really crush the strong on Earth. Diana's strength is also not weaker than Odin's, and there is also the Ancient One and the Kryptonian who lives in seclusion in Metropolis. How could it be possible that 4 people at the level of the Father of the Gods could not beat Thanos? 4 against 1. There is no way to justify this. The last thing he thought about was a headache, so he simply didn't want to think about it. Thanos was what he had to think about. After leaving the banquet hall, Jennifer asked in a low voice, "Master, it can't be true, can it? A hero who will crush the Earth? Including us?" "Of course it doesn't include us, nor the X-Men, Justice League, etc." Duke smiled. "This is just one of many timelines, so don't be nervous." Oh. The 3 apprentices finally breathed a sigh of relief. From afar, they saw Sif approaching. "Are you waiting for me?" Duke asked. "Yes, I'm curious. Vostager and Fandral were killed by Hela as soon as they entered the field. Hogan also died in resistance, but I didn't see myself. What about me? What happened to me?" End of this chapter. Chapter 320, You Have No Schedule. "And me?" Sif asked, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the group in front of her. The rest of them quickly came to their senses. Those who could enter the banquet hall were all at the top of the Asgardian hierarchy, and Sif, being Thor's childhood friend, was no exception. It was impossible for her not to be involved in the battle scenes. Verstag and Fandral had been impaled by Hela, the goddess of death, as soon as they appeared. Hogan had put up a tougher fight, leading the army once, but his end was equally grim. However, Sif was nowhere to be seen, as if she hadn't been in Asgard at all. "You betrayed us," someone accused. "Huh? Sif's eyes widened in surprise. Just kidding, you just didn't have a schedule and didn't participate, Duke clarified, trying to diffuse the tension. Sif narrowed her eyes. Okay, you just didn't die. Together with Heimdall, we held a guerrilla war in Asgard and gathered the people who were hiding from Hela's army, Duke explained. That's it? Sif asked, still skeptical. That's it, Duke confirmed. Oh, I see. Thank you, Sif said, frowning as she left. After returning to the luxurious room arranged for them, Diana stood with her hands on her hips. Tell me, what's going on? What situation? Duke pretended not to understand. Don't play dumb with me. What's the deal with Sif? Diana demanded. Wife, you have to trust me. I really have nothing to do with her. The last time she came to deliver goods was the first time we met. You can't doubt me. Duke quickly defended himself. A few veins popped up on Diana's forehead as she grabbed Duke's ear and twisted it. Are you still lying to me? Why didn't we see her when Thanos destroyed Asgard? You can't really have betrayed me, right? Sif and the others had been kicked out and hadn't seen Thanos' arrival. Otherwise, she would have definitely asked endless questions. Let me go, Duke struggled, finally freeing his ear. It's actually nothing. She was among the other half who left. You know how many people escaped from Asgard. We needed a leader to hold the field and lead the people. Sif is Thor's childhood friend, and Thor didn't want her to die. Diana sat down angrily, saying that might arouse her suspicion. What if she really thinks she betrayed us? She won't, Duke assured her. I don't know if she could be. I'm afraid there are quite a few people who think that way. Maybe it was just a momentary shock, and they didn't think about it. But afterward, everyone who participated in the banquet will remember. Heimdall didn't appear in the war because he was locked up by Loki, and everyone understands that. But Sif, are you worried about her now? Duke asked, feeling a bit defensive. Don't worry, we don't need to prove her loyalty. Odin and the others know it well, Duke said casually, not caring about the potential gossip. In fact, he could have conjured images of Sif fighting gorillas, but he didn't. For example, the executioner Scourge had taken refuge with Hela early on, but he didn't materialize that either. Scourge had just wanted a job and had repented afterward, stopping the army of the dead and ultimately dying at Hela's hands. It could still be modified. Therefore, Duke didn't release that video. Otherwise, Scourge would likely be treated differently soon. He wouldn't be beaten to death, but he would definitely be isolated or locked up. Sif probably sensed what the people around her thought of her, so she had come over to ask. For 3 days, Duke had been accompanying Diana to visit Asgard and the rest of the gods. Thor did not reappear until the 4th day. I decided to strike first, Thor announced. Have you asked your father? Duke inquired. Thor hesitated. If Odin had agreed to his plan, he wouldn't have come running over. You want to form an expeditionary force? Duke asked. Correct, Thor confirmed. Then have you ever thought about how big the Thanos Legion is and how we can possibly match their strength? Duke questioned, raising an eyebrow. How many powerful legions does he have under his command? Do you know that the one that invaded New York last time was one of his relatively weaker ones? Do you know how many partners he has? And how many people in Asgard can actually fight? Duke retorted. To be honest, Asgard only boasts the name of the Aesir gods, but there is hardly anyone who can truly fight. Thor barely counts as one. As for the rest, they're quite average. And Odin is dying again. Isn't there still you? Thor laughed. Don't count on me, I'm not available. Duke waved his hand dismissively. He had no desire to embark on a laborious expedition and preferred to stay comfortably on his own little planet. Thor thought to himself, you won't really lose to Thanos, right? Wait, you said that the Chitauri Legion is under Thanos, so Thanos is collecting the universal Rubik's Cube. Something like that? Thor asked, his curiosity piqued. He hadn't experienced the events of the original Dark World, so he wasn't on Earth to be inspired by the original stone, but he still knew some things from Odin. Although his knowledge wasn't comprehensive, as the records in Odin's treasure house were incomplete. You need to explore it yourself, Duke replied, taking a sip of his black tea. The most important thing now is to restore your father's health and heal him, rather than forming some expeditionary army. Thor fell silent. Actually, I have already noticed that father's time is running out. He sleeps more frequently, and the duration is getting longer. Although we are gods, we will die. The lifespan of 5,000 years, Father is nearing the end. The corpse that was sent off the earth last time, even though Loki lied to him, had made him realize that his father's time was limited. Wait, do you have a way to prolong Father's life? Thor's mind trembled with sudden hope. Could this be Duke's purpose? Maybe, maybe not, Duke replied. What do you mean? Thor asked, frowning. The end of a human's normal lifespan is nothing more than the end of cell division. As long as the cells are reshaped or reinvigorated, it is not difficult to rejuvenate. But I am not very clear on the body structure of your gods. I need volunteer researchers, Duke explained. Although he had temporarily cured Odin with the druid's healing technique, it did not address the root cause. I'll do it, Thor said resolutely. You? Aren't you afraid that I'll trick you on purpose? Duke gave Thor a playful look. Heh, if you wanted to cheat me, would you really need to tell me? Thor laughed. Decisive, courageous, very good. I will prepare and start researching tomorrow. Well. Despite his resolve, Thor couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy about being called a research subject. End of this chapter.